Evening, members, and welcome to this meeting of the full council. And it's really nice to see you all here again tonight. Yes, I shall still probably make a mess of everything, but don't worry about it. I'm Councillor Sue Wilson, Chairman of the Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. And I'd like to welcome all those in attendance this evening. We are webcasting the meeting and it will be broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. This meeting is taking place via a hybrid platform. Whilst most members are present in the chamber, there are also members, council officers and members of the public who have registered for public question time who have joined the meeting on Zoom. And I'm being assisted tonight by a governance officer to help manage the chat function. Those members attending the meeting via Zoom are able to participate in the debate of any item before the Council this evening. However, they are not permitted to vote. Only those members present in the chamber this evening can vote on any item. If members wish to speak, can you please indicate by clearly raising your hand? Those members who are joining the meeting via Zoom, please indicate on the chat function. For your safety and for those around you, members, please remain seated when speaking. For those members in the room, with the exception of agenda item number 9, Council Budget and Council Tax 2022-23 and Medium Term Financial Strategy 22-23 to 24-26, for which we are required to have a recorded vote. Voting is by way of a show of hands. Therefore, members should clearly raise their hands when indicating their vote when called upon to do so. This meeting is scheduled for 3 hours, and I would be grateful if everyone could ensure that they keep their speeches concise and to the issue being considered. We're not expecting the fire alarm, however. In the event of an alarm, please leave via the fire exits and assemble in the car park. And please take your coats with you. Can I also remind everyone to ensure they have a mobile phone switched off to silent. Sorry, their mobile phone switched off or switched to silent. Before I proceed with the first items of business, I would like to welcome Suzanne Bennett, our new Corporate Director. We can all wave to you. To her first meeting of the full Council. Members will know that Suzanne is replacing Chris Fleeton upon his retirement. Apologies for absence. We've received apologies from the following councillors: Councillor Frankie Ritchie, Councillor Nick Unsworth, Councillor Hilton Johnson, Councillor Mrs Sandham and Councillor Mrs Scattergood.
Councillor Scattergood is online, Madam Chairman.
Right, okay. Do we have any further apologies at all? Right. Members, before moving to the next items, I would like to advise that the following members are joining this meeting virtually. Councillor John McGee, Councillor Kevin Bowes, Councillor Paul Euston, Councillor David Hume and Councillor Mrs Scattergood. As I have already advised, the aforementioned members can participate in the debate this evening but cannot vote. Declarations of interest. I would remind members that guidance on declarations of interest related to the Council budget and medium-term financial strategy and the Council tax resolution has been issued by the monitoring officer. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest they wish to declare this evening? Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I need to declare an interest, a non-pecuniary interest in item 9 as a charity that I belong to is due to receive money from the budget.
Right. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest in public question time as Speaker Mr. Michael Staines is a colleague. That could be on behalf of the whole GNI group, if that's permissible.
Right. No. Minutes of the previous meeting. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting of full council held on the 13th of December 2021? Councillor Butland. I now seek a seconder. Councillor Cunningham. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. The minutes are approved. Public question time. Before we begin, can I check that the Governance Officer has admitted the speakers for this evening to the meeting from the waiting room?
Yes, Chairman, we've admitted all the registered speakers. We just have Mr. Mackenzie. He's just a little delayed in joining, but they are now all present in the virtual chamber. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I would like to start by welcoming all public speakers to the meeting and ask that you keep your microphones switched to silent until I invite you to speak. Members of the public are advised that the chat function is for council officers and councillors attending this meeting. Any registered speaker using the chat function to communicate with councillors, officers or other registered speakers will be removed from the meeting without notice. Members, we have 4 registered speakers for this evening's meeting. Registered speakers have 3 minutes each to make their statements. A warning bell will be sounded at the expiry of the 3 minutes, and the registered speaker must cease speaking at that time, if not already done so. And Mr. Alan Mackenzie, you wish to ask a question in relation to predetermination in planning. Please unmute your microphone and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Although I'm asking a question as a private resident, just as an aside, on behalf of the SWAP campaign, I'd like to welcome Braintree District Council to the Wethersfield Prison Proposal Community Forum on Facebook, and to the SWAP Facebook group and SWAP on Instagram. You do know you're missing out on Twitter. You're very welcome to join. Thanks for now. Councillor Butland appears to have answered all questions relating to the Wethersfield Airfield Mega Prisons proposal so far. He seems to have instructed all members to maintain silence in respect of any reference to the proposal, even though there's no planning application, on the pretense of the Ministry of Justice potentially taking rejection to judicial review because of a predetermination by the council. The planning committee apart, are council members aware that the Local Government Association Probity and Planning Guidance to councillors recommends engagement with the community, and that councillors have a right in common law to have a predisposition such that they can make their points known, so long as it's done in such a way that is not regarded as a predetermination, in the way that Councillor Butland and Councillor Tattersley have made clear their predetermined positions. In which case, should not both of them recuse themselves from any participation in council matters relating to the prisons? So, has the council had feedback from the Ministry of Justice regarding the pre-consultation that was held? If it has, will it release the information to the public? If it has not received the information, why hasn't it? Should it not be requiring the MOJ in the interest of transparency to provide the information? Indeed, is the council still in discussions with the MOJ about the mega prisons proposal? Is there a planning performance agreement in place? If so, what stage has it reached? Has the MOJ realised that there is no support from local residents after it has been misled so blatantly by the leader of the council and the representative of Three Fields Ward in encouraging it to pursue a costly and ultimately unsuccessful proposal? And having encouraged the MOJ, should a proposal of this magnitude proceed and then fail in its application, what will it cost the council to have opposed it? Which it will have to do because it breaches so many of the council's own local policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Beverly Alt, you wish to ask a question in relation to prison proposal. Please unmute your microphone and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Councillor Butland was reported in the Dunmo broadcast back in March 2016 to have said, "I had a letter from the MOJ. I wrote back and said the MOD had empty land that could well be suitable. This was just my idea. It had not been put to the council. RAF Wethersfield is an eyesore and something needs to be done. Does he think that 14 cross-shaped concrete blocks, 4 stories high, over 1 mile long and 3 miles in perimeter is prettier?" Yesterday, I read an article that Essex County Council have just released a £300,000 campaign to promote tourism in our local areas, Finchingfield being one of many areas mentioned. Do council members really think people would want to visit an area where these mega prisons are proposed? Do Braintree councillors realise just how beautiful the North Essex countryside is and what an asset it is to the county? Are you aware that the great Bardfield artists like Ravilius, Borden, Aldridge, Crudas, Roundtree, Chapman, Clifford Smith, who painted in these local areas and are growing in recognition and popularity, and like the area of outstanding natural beauty that is Dedham Vale and Constable Country, this local area is comparable and is just as beautiful and can attract tourism. Are they also aware that farm owners adjacent to the River Pant have been meeting and discussing with numerous countryside groups, Essex Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, Essex and Suffolk Water, the Environment Agency, the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group and others, to form a Pant Valley cluster to encourage the ecology and habitat of the area? All this opportunity to be wasted by pouring thousands of tonnes of concrete into the centre of it. Do councillors recognise what a diabolical environmental disaster that would bring upon the county? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Mr. Mark Alt, you wish to ask a question in relation to the prison proposal. Please unmute your microphone and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Do the council members realise the amount of opposition there is to the proposed building of the 2 mega prisons at the Wethersfield airfield and the level of environmental damage that will impart on one of the most beautiful areas of the Essex countryside? I'm sure all members know that the proposal would drive coach and horses through the national planning policies and Braintree planning policies and prove to be a huge embarrassment to the council, especially after the abject failure of these projects. Are all members of Braintree District Council aware that so far 10 parish councils have combined together to form the Wethersfield Airbase Scrutiny Committee in opposition to this ridiculous proposal for a mega prison at the Wethersfield Airbase? Those parishes include Finchingfield, Wethersfield, Great Bardfield, Panfield, Shelford, which comprise the Three Fields ward. Does the representative of the Three Fields ward, Councillor Tattersley, regret misrepresenting those parish councils and their residents when in September 2021 he said after a meeting with Finchingfield parish councillors that the consensus was that the proposals are to be welcomed? It was then reported internally at BDC on an update email from the Corporate Communications and Media Officer that Councillor Tattersley was very positive about the scheme, suggested that local parish councils already know about the plans and are very positive as they prefer delivery of a new prison to housing in this area. Was it not improper for Councillor Tattersley to have met the MOJ when again he evidently misrepresented his constituents and further misled the Ministry of Justice into believing this was an appropriate site. Following on from the council's totally inadequate reply to the MOJ's request for prison sites letter in 2016, which started all of this. From correspondence obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, Councillor Tattersley misrepresentations were compounded by internal correspondence within the Braintree District Council and with the MOJ's agents Cushman and Wakefield, who contacted members of the planning department and reported that having met Councillor Tattersley, he was very positive about the proposals and that the PCs are already aware of apparently all of them are in support and support the principle of the new prison in this location. Is Councillor Tattersley now aware that the Three Fields and surrounding parishes do not support the prison proposal and neither do the vast majority of residents? Does the council believe this now requires further investigation in respect of conduct by Mr Tattersley for the misrepresentations to the MOJ in respect of the parish council support, which has led to the MOJ's interest in the site for a prison? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holt. Mr. Michael Staines, you wish to ask a question in relation to Wethersfield Airfield reuse. Please unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I'd like to ask one question in three parts relating to the reuse of the 825 acres of Wethersfield Airfield site. 5 different but related questions on this topic were sent in advance to 2 cabinet members and 1 ward member and officers by email on Sunday. However, I was advised today that I may not ask specific questions to members that must go to the full council. So, dear full council, media-linked or unofficial and irregular pre-applications and unguarded comments by elected representatives on potential hypothetical major development schemes can lead to significant health, emotional and mental health stress, especially for older people that represent over a quarter of the Three Fields ward population, which obviously includes the Wethersfield Airfield site. The reuse of such a huge site in such a rural location with such poor road links is of interest and concern to many residents in the area, including at least 10 parish councils at the last count. There is also strong and growing mistrust of how senior sitting councillors have been involved in the background over many years, supporting and enabling a range of schemes that would dwarf existing communities, including the Ministry of Justice sham-saltation on 2 new prisons and silence from the owners of the Ministry of Defence on their plans for the remaining 500 acres. Or the entire site if the Ministry of Justice does not submit a formal planning application, despite winding up all of these residents. The question in 3 parts is, part 1, how could a BDC members forum on the topic of Wethersfield Airfield reuse help build public trust and ensure the entire site is considered within a robust, transparent and credible approach, rather than a series of piecemeal elements such as the 2 prisons? Although they're huge, they only account for a third of the Wethersfield Airfield site. Part 2. To provide the most effective support to the Planning Committee in considering large-scale development options, does the Council vision the inclusion of owners and developers within a members' forum process to be instigated or ordered by Braintree District Council with an appropriate pay-to-play fee similar to an archaeological interest, or will it be an optional process for developers to choose to engage transparently with communities, especially parish councils, or not? And the last part, will the reuse of Wethersfield Airfield become the subject of a members' forum? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite now Councillor Butland to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you to the members of the public. In terms of the points that have been raised, some of which I totally and utterly reject, I would give some advice though. If you feel that any councillor has acted inappropriately, there is a method for dealing with that, and those complaints should be forwarded to the monitoring officer at Braintree District Council for a full inquiry to be carried out. And I would encourage any of the speakers who think that has been the case to do so. As regards the question of the forum, Councillor Mrs Spray has already informed members that she is working on the development of members' forums and will be reporting to the Council, I think, in March. And we will deal with that at that stage. As regards predetermination, no one can predetermine anything at the moment because we haven't got a planning application. As and when a planning application is received, or if and when a planning application is received, then that will be the situation when people may predetermine the situation. As far as Mr Mackenzie is concerned, he says, I have made a determination. I would be interested to see where I have made a determination, because I have not, and on any occasion, expressed a view in favour or against. What I have done is to say that there are issues both in favour and against. And one of my major concerns, as I have said on a number of occasions, is around highways access, which I think would be a significant issue to be overcome by any planning applicant on that site, whether it was to build a prison, 5,000 houses, or anything else. I think, Madam Chairman, any other issues we will take up by way of a written response if it is required. But given that very little has changed since these members previously addressed Council, I think it unlikely that we will need to do a very long response.
Thank you very much. Can I remind the speakers that actually you don't have any right of reply? Members, this statement concludes public question time. And can I thank all the speakers once again for their questions. You're all welcome to continue watching the remainder of the meeting on the Council's YouTube channel if you wish to do so. And I'm now going to ask the Governance Officer to remove you from the meeting.
Chairman, all public speakers have been removed from the virtual chamber. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to read some very sad announcements first. Former District Councillor John Fimbo. It was with great sadness that I advised members of the death of a former District Councillor, John Fimbo. John passed away on the 10th of January 2022, and his funeral was held on the 4th of February 2022, which Councillor Mrs Pell attended. John Fimbo was elected to the Council in 1987 for Three Fields Ward and then served continuously until 2015, a total of 28 years. John was also Vice Chairman of the Council in 2004 to 5 and Chairman of the Council in 2005 to 6. And I'd like to invite people to say a few words in tribute to John Fimbo. Councillor Mrs Pell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, it was a privilege to be asked to represent the Council in my past Chairman's capacity at John's funeral. And I call him John because that's how John used to be like to be called. It wasn't Councillor Fimbo, it was John. Now, John was 88, so he'd reached a good age in his life. I worked with him very closely as he was my Vice Chairman, and he had a sense of humour. He didn't mind what he did, he would just get on with it. As a testimony to the man, the crematorium was absolutely packed and the cars were queued right down to the main road. Also in attendance at his funeral was Councillor Mann here, Councillor Swear, and I also took Tony Shelton with me, another former chairman of the council. And it was nice to see so many people there recognising the work that he'd done. The service, I thought, was conducted with some sense of humour. To give you an idea, grandson spoke about John and said that because John wasn't just a councillor, he was a farmer, he did groundworks, you name it, John did it or was involved in it. That he was using his digger one day in the middle of a field, and one of the neighbours nearby was concerned, so they phoned the police. And the police came and said, what are you doing? And they said, who are you? He said, I'm John Fimbo. Look, it says so on my digger. I'm John Fimbo. They said, but how do we know that? He said, my boys are over there. Go and ask them. So they went over and asked them. They said, no, we don't know him. And everybody smiled, and it sort of broke the ice from what could be an uncomfortable situation at a funeral. His family life was quite well known to me, as I've known John for a long time through his extended family, as most people in the area also knew him. And he will be missed by so many people throughout the district. I will miss him because he used to visit one of my neighbours, and I used to see him, you know, come and we'd say, hello, John, and all sorts of things like that. But he was, how can I put it, an excellent chairman for this district when he was in post. And so I am sure that his family will have appreciated us all attending. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mann.
Well, John was both a gentleman and a farmer, but he was far away from the usual stereotype. He was always a gentleman. He was courteous, he was loyal, he was unassuming. But as a farmer, he was much more at home in his digger than on a horse. I think in addition to his very, very strong contribution to BDC over the 28 years as an elected member, I would particularly single out and pay tribute to his equally amazing contribution to his immediate Wethersfield community. He was involved in local football. He actually set up a local club. He was on the parish council, on the village hall committee. He was the village club chairman. He was on the playing field committee. Now, that's hours and hours, years and years of local service, and that's how I shall best, I think, myself remember him.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Former Councillor John Fimbo was a very long-serving member of this council, and the news reports, I remember at the time, they're still online, in 2012, he and Councillor Mrs Pell both received at the same time 25 years service commendations, and he went on to serve for more years for the council, for another 3. I remember him well as I served at the same time as him on planning committee, where he always contributed, and my memory of him was that he had a marvellous infectious laugh. If anyone heard John laugh full belt, it was terrific, and as others have said, always very friendly and approachable, and will be much missed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to add my comments from this side to those of Councillors Mrs Pell, Mann and Abbott. I think John was someone who I don't know anyone disliked, and I don't recall anyone ever falling out with John. He certainly was a man of the land, and certainly a man of Wethersfield, having lived his whole life in Wethersfield and the surrounding district. He did have a very infectious sense of humour, and that laughter you always knew when John was in the building. One of the things that I shall remember was ringing him one morning, and he answered, and I said, "A lot of background noise, John. Is it my end or yours?" And he said, "Well, I'm halfway across the field in the tractor, so it's probably my end," he said. And he just was someone, in a way, that captured everything. He was always available for people to talk to and for constituents to help. And from this side of the chamber, he was an extremely good colleague throughout the time that he was a member. He, like so many chairmen, when he was chairman of this authority, did it in his own way. He didn't change. It was the same John Fimbo that joined the council all those years ago. And from this side, we would also add our condolences to the family for their great loss.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say anything at all? No? So on behalf of the council, I offer the council's sincere condolences to John's family and to all those who knew him. Unfortunately, we have another piece of sad news. Former District Councillor Michael Haslam. It's with great sadness that I advise members of the death of a former District Councillor, Michael Haslam. Michael passed away on his 91st birthday, and his funeral was held on the 14th of February. Michael was elected to the council in 2003 and served one term of office until May 2007. I would like to invite Councillor Butland to say something.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tonight we actually pay tribute to two gentlemen, but who were quite different in their approach. In fact, it would be difficult to find a pair of gentlemen who were so different from each other, but the one thing they did both have was the ability to work well with all people. Michael was one of those candidates I remember in 2003 that we promised would not get elected. As so often happens when you promise people they won't get elected, they do get elected. And Michael carried out his duties very conscientiously for the period that he served. A perfect gentleman. He worked with Councillor Mrs. Schmidt for many years in Bocking Blackwater and took his councillor duties very, very seriously. Another gentleman who will be missed. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, as Councillor Butland says, Michael was elected at the same time as I. We were promised we wouldn't be elected. And he was obviously surprised because I never got sure. He lived exactly on the cusp of Fearing and Kelvedon. But he did carry out his work very conscientiously. Even though he didn't live in Bocking, he just knew everyone. He got on with it. He was very, very good. He was a gentleman, quite literally. Sadly, I was unable to go to his funeral because I think it would have been most interesting, as he comes from a very interesting family. The interior designer and socialite, Nicky Haslam, is his younger brother, and they have a most interesting background. But Michael, you would never have known because he was just very, very nice. But he was also a man of principle. When the then government loosened the licensing and gambling laws, he felt that no longer with a good conscience could he serve to be a member of the licensing committee, and so honourably stood down. So not only was a gentleman, he was a man of principle. He didn't stand for re-election again because he felt that he was very aged anyway at the time, and that it would be best served with people from the Braintree and Bocking area. But for the short time he did, he served us very, very well. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? No. So on behalf of the council, I offer the council's sincere condolences to Michael's family and to all those who knew him. I myself was delighted to attend the much anticipated opening of the iConstruct Conference Centre. This is a fantastic new facility offering advice, one-to-one mentoring and grant support to businesses connected to the construction industry. Their activities will serve businesses across the South East, and this hub will be a place where innovative construction ideas, technologies and techniques are shared and celebrated. And I have to say, on a personal level, I was very impressed with the fact that the toilets are unisexed completely. They don't have men's and ladies. And you can work that one out. Business and community visits. I've also done quite a lot, bearing in mind the COVID and everything else, quite a lot of visits, and I'm continuing to do them. I've been to the Whittam Hub. I went to Bar 92 in Braintree, which I have to say, not only with the pedestrianisation of the street and everything, but it's a very nice place to go if you want a lunch on a nice day. Very different, very nice. First stop in Braintree, the Whittam Luncheon Club, a visit to Father Christmas, which was very enjoyable, in Sybil Headingham, Cressing Parish Council, where we had a talk given by the fire service, Home Start in Halstead, and the Pride of Tendering Awards, which I have to say was absolutely, there must have been about 300 of us there. We all had food, tables were laid out beautifully, and you couldn't fault it. It was very good. And the number of people that got awards was amazing. And also to the Wassail evening, and I don't know whether I've said that right, at the Big Bear Cider Farm, which was very pleasant as well. So I'm now going to invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to make any announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to make a short statement about the Levelling Up White Paper, which has been issued since we last met as a council. And then, with your permission, Madam Chairman, when I have finished, I wonder whether you would kindly invite Councillor Mrs Schmidt to advise the council on the issues of the storms that have affected the district over the weekend and the council's reaction. Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, it's been a long time coming. I think we've been 18 months expecting a white paper, which was originally going to be about devolution, but when it finally appeared, is retitled Levelling Up, but of which devolution is a part, and is some 300 pages in length. So it's not a short, snappy white paper, but goes into significant detail as to how the government want to see levelling up across the whole country. It's set out in 12 missions, as they're called, and one of those missions, Mission 12, is that by 2030, every part of England that wants one will have a devolution deal with powers at or approaching the highest level of devolution and a simplified long-term funding settlement. And in the white paper talks of 3 potential levels of devolution, which would coincide with what powers and freedoms would be given to local government within those levels. This afternoon I met with all Essex leaders and chief executives from the 12 districts, counties and city authorities, Essex County Council, and the two unitary authorities of Southend and Thurrock. This was the first time that we have met since the white paper was published, and was more about information gathering and an exchange of ideas as to how we might want to take it forward. There was agreement that Essex should be looking to be ambitious in what it wants to achieve for the whole of the Greater Essex area. However, there will be differing views as to what the county may wish, and by that I don't mean the county council, I mean the county, might wish to seek to achieve. It's well worth looking at the various powers that could be obtained at the differing levels of devolution. And at the very top level, some of the things that many of the authorities in Essex have been talking about for some time would be achievable. None of us were keen on the formation of the South East LEP, the Local Enterprise Partnership, believing that Essex would have had a better situation with it within Essex. That would, of course, now be achievable under a devolution scheme. However, we are a long way from that devolution. There will need to be discussions. The difference this time from previous is that everybody will know what can be obtained if they go down the devolution line and at what levels. Also, the difference this time is that it doesn't have to be unanimous amongst all the authorities. The other thing which we have to accept and recognise as districts is that the county council and the two unitary authorities are the ones who have, if you like, the lead on this, although I believe from this afternoon's discussion all three of those authorities would want to work hand in hand with the district. There is clearly a lot in the white paper, and we agreed that all members of all councils should receive a briefing on what is in the white paper, and so we gain, as leaders can gain the views of their members. It was also agreed that that presentation should be the same presentation to all authorities, so that there is a consistency on what will be done. And I will be ensuring that this authority receives that presentation at the earliest opportunity. The link to the white paper, and there is an executive summary as well if you don't want to plough through all 300 pages. But also, I congratulate the East of England Local Government Authority for the resume that they have done of that white paper. I'm not sure whether it has gone to all members as yet, but if it hasn't, I will ensure that that is sent to all members tomorrow, which will at least give a good background. And also there's a very good annex to that, which shows what authorities could seek to achieve under the various levels of devolution. I think what is certain as far as Essex is concerned, Essex is one of the largest counties. I think the government would clearly be interested to see what Essex came forward with, but I think it is quite complex, and I think it unlikely that Essex would be within the first tranche. It also, of course, does not mean that we have to form unitary authorities and that overnight the likes of Braintree District Council and other councils would lose their independence and autonomy. So I think some of the major things that were causing people concerns last time may have been shifted, but certainly it is something that local government, and I think here in Essex particularly, we would want to move forward. The opportunity to have our own transport authority, to be able to plan our own transport infrastructure, and I don't just mean roads, I mean all transport infrastructure, would certainly, I think, be something that would be a prize. Certainly also working with Homes England about how one gets more affordable housing, and also a direct link with the rail network as to how that might be improved. These are, I think, great prizes. The issue will be what price are we prepared to pay in terms of a devolution to have that. Madam Chairman, that's just a very sort of high-level thing. I will send the ILGA paper out to all members, and we will arrange for a members' evening to learn more about it and also enable us to gather the views of all members of the Council on how we might move forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, would you like to talk about the storms and all the wonderful things we've done?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm sure everyone's really sick and fed up of it. But just to give a brief update to members, we had plenty of notice from the Met Office of the potential impact of Storm Eunice, and so the Tactical Coordination Group was put into place. The two key issues that were needed to respond to as an organisation were our emergency planning response and how we supported our community to deal with the impact of the storm and the aftermath, and our business continuity response, how we could continue to run our services and mitigate any impact. The immediate decision was taken to close our cemeteries and to close our parks where possible. We also closed the top floor of the George Yard car park. It was decided that we would try to do the Friday refuse collection, and our magnificent crews, as ever, rose to the occasion, turned up even earlier than usual, and quite unbelievably completed the collection. and we have had many, many emails congratulating the team on what they did on that day. We have, of course, had lots of phone calls and comments on missing bins, so I would say if anyone comes across a lonely lost bin, please report it, because we need to collect them back in. The communications team were constantly sending out messages through all the various forms of media to the members of the public, as everything was changing literally hour by hour. And our customer services, of course, helped with phone calls and contacts. If they couldn't help themselves, they then signposted to the right agencies for people. As we know, we had a large number of power cuts across the district. Initially, these were resolved quickly in some areas, but then I'm afraid some went on longer and longer. Some electricity came back, and then it went again. And so it has been very, very difficult. We had a request from UK Power Network to help the door knocking and welfare support for those without power who are on their vulnerable list. And our enforcement team have been, even today, still doing that. By Saturday morning, there was still a great number of properties without electricity, and so we decided to set up comfort centres in Braintree, Witham and Halstead, leisure centres, Saturday afternoon and on Sunday, with BDC staff deployed at all of them. This would allow for people to have a shower, charge their phones, have a hot drink. As it happened, not many people took up the facilities, which was good. It meant they were managing elsewhere, but they were there for the residents. Of course, there's been a great deal of damage, and even yet we're still just collating it all. Roof tiles closed, so Great Square in Braintree, for example, was closed. Fallen trees, branches down, etc. That work has been continuing all weekend and will continue until we know the full extent of this. It has been very trying. I will, just for Councillor Everard's sake, let him know that the windmill was okay. Living so close to it, I was quite concerned what might happen. A ratchet came off, but it was repaired by Saturday, and the windmill is still standing and still fine, which is wonderful. I'd like to thank all of the team, Sherry Root led, and the members of staff have just been absolutely amazing. They gave up many hours of their weekend to help in all manner of ways, and indeed many of them gave up their whole weekend working on it. And so again, although it was something that we couldn't do a thing about to stop, as usual, our marvellous team rose to the occasion, and I'm sure on behalf of all the councillors, I'd like to thank them for the amazing effort they put in. That's all, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm coming to the presentation of Chris Fleeton, which is very sad, but also very nice. As many of you know, we have reached the end of an era tonight as we say goodbye to Chris at what will be his last full council before he retires. After working in local government for 7 years at Malden District Council and Colchester Borough Councils, Chris joined Braintree District Council in 1985 as a group accountant. But it became clear very early on that Chris would progress in the organisation, and in 2003 he became a corporate director. Actually, I think you should stand up, Chris, because people might not even be able to see you over there. Right. Do you want to come out? Just come out a little bit so we can see you. Thank you very much. It's awful, isn't it? Chris will be remembered for his quiet, strong leadership and developing many staff who have worked for him, but in particular how he has built up a really strong finance team. This team have successfully managed the organisation's finances, which has enabled the authority to deliver an ambitious agenda. I would also like to pay tribute to Helen Crishock, who's not here tonight, is she? No. Who has worked for Braintree District Council for almost 32 years after joining the authority in 1990, who is also retiring. It just leaves me to say a really big thank you to Chris and Helen for their significant contribution to this authority and the community, and to wish them both well in their retirement, which, having spoken to Chris this afternoon, includes playing golf, going on holiday, and all the lovely things you can't do at the moment. So, would you like to go and sit down now? And can I invite the following people to say something? They would like to say something. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd like to, on behalf of the Council and particularly this side of the Chamber, to thank Chris for the work that he's done for this Council for so many years. He became a corporate director just as this side of the Chamber took control, so he's had to work and suffer us for the whole of his time as a corporate director. I've found Chris to be someone who, I don't know, just exudes confidence in the opinions that he gives. Chris will never rush into a decision and is being consistently calm, and when we've had issues and problems, he's not let it faze him, and as a result he's been able to stop politicians getting excited, etc., which is half, I think, the job of a good local authority officer. Clearly, Chris has never been one for the limelight, and I'm sure walking out there was probably one of the worst things that he's had to do in the time he's been with us. But certainly that in no way detracts from the very high value that we have placed upon his work. Not just his work, but the work of his team, which has meant that the authority has never ever been in a situation where its financial position has been difficult. I'd also, like you, Madam Chairman, like to just say also a thank you to Helen, who I think Chris knows a little. For new members, I think they have cohabited for quite some time. And Chris, Helen rather, as our HR, again, a very, very pragmatic HR director who, through the various changes we've had, has provided tremendous help and support, I'm sure, to each of the three chief executives that she has served, and certainly to myself as leader. You mentioned golf, Madam Chairman, yes, but of course also Chris is a great diver and likes diving and all of that sort of thing, which of course you and I do on a regular basis, Madam Chairman, don't we? But I know that he will have more time to participate in that as well, and I wish him and Helen a very, very long and happy retirement. And thank you for all the work that you've done.
Councillor Abbott.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, in agreeing entirely with the Leader of the Council and his words, thanking Helen for all her work over the years, the many panels and meetings we've had with Helen. She's always very positive and supportive in everything we did. And wishing Chris the very best for the future. I hope Chris doesn't mind me saying he's one of those officers who always seems to have been here, and I think we're going to miss him in more ways than we know. Although obviously he's got an excellent replacement. And I thought also, setting politics aside, and I mean this genuinely, Chris has helped see this council through some pretty turbulent times, particularly financially, and this council has, setting politics aside, done better than many others in its financial arrangements, and I think Chris has contributed very significantly to that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we'll all miss Chris. I mean, he's been helpful to all of us in his quiet way, but if you need help and information, he's always been there to give it to you and to explain it to you in a way that you then understood what the issue was. But also, to Helen too. They've been a good team, the two of them, and Helen will be greatly missed as well. I just feel that it's the end of an era, really. Chris going, we lost another member of his team a little while ago when we lost Trevor. And you just feel it's very sad, don't you? But I do wish them well. I know they like their holidays, and I'm sure that we will still see them in Halstead. And hope they have an enjoyable time together. And thank him for all the good work that he's done.
Councillor Mann.
Well, I think I first met Chris over 4 decades ago, strangely perhaps on a Braintree football pitch. I hasten to add that Chris was a teenager then, and I was already in football terms a veteran. And it's interesting that these many years on, he's become a veteran himself, a veteran professional specialist local government finance officer with 36 years service for BDC under his belt. His team members and his colleagues are on record in writing as having found him a pleasure to work with across these years, and members too, as we've said, have been grateful for his measured, calmly reassuring presence in this vital central role. Amazing, stamina. 36 years. Chris and Helen, your come and rest. Very well deserved.
Thank you very much. Chris, I don't know, did you want to say a few words?
Yes, I will.
You might have to come out here again, but...
Let's hold this as well. Is this a test? Perhaps I could just put thank you, Dave. Actually, this probably isn't the worst experience that I've had. That was probably the first time I stood up in this chamber. Fairly young, never really been in touch with members before. Had to present the environmental health budget of about £2.5 million. And I was nervous, had a presentation, slides, etc. I've got one question: what's a spinal column point? And that was answered by the director for me before I got a chance to answer the question. Then later in the evening, there was an item that members took about half an hour to decide whether to spend £200 on poop scoops or not. So size isn't everything, but that was my first experience with members, and say, over the years this has got a bit easier, although we actually don't present at committee so much. But thank you for the kind words that you've said. Firstly, I'd like to apologise on Helen's behalf. She couldn't be here. She's got a prior engagement. Thought going out for dinner with friends was better than coming here. Can't really understand that. But she said she will watch the webcast later, so she will get to see it. Just a little bit about myself. I was born in Wethersfield. Went to school at St Michael's in Braintree. Not in Clare Road, but where Tesco's car park is now. I went to grammar school in Earl's Colne, and I now live in Earl's Colne. So I'm very much of a local boy, and have always wanted to make a difference for the district. I'm very proud to have worked for this organisation for 36 years, because I think it's been a very special council over that time, for two main reasons. Firstly, I think the relationship between members and officers has always been exceptional. With everyone working together for the benefit of the residents, but also understanding that the different roles that officers and members have to play. respect on both sides, and that's been across the chamber. Secondly, this may be a little bit more controversial. For the majority of the time, members have not been very political, with everyone working together for the benefit of the residents in the district. And I really hope that these two special and maybe unique ways of working continue in the future. I've really enjoyed working with you all. I'm leaving you in very capable hands of Phil and Suzanne. I don't know Suzanne so well, but Phil I've known for 36 years. So, just one last budget to set, and then I'm out of here.
Thank you very much, Chris. Right. Right, I'm just going to pause for a second to allow Phil Myers to leave the chamber. Thank you, members. This item is set out on pages 6 to 8 of the agenda. Please can I invite Councillor Graham Butland, Chairman of the Appointment Committee, to introduce the report and move the recommendations. Please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
I move the paper.
Seconded, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Right. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Reserve right, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Butland to speak on this matter.
Very briefly, Madam Chairman, agenda item 7, which members have the paper in front of them, following the retirement of our existing Section 151 officer, the authority is required to appoint a new Section 151 officer or Chief Financial Officer. The Appointments Committee, which comprised of members of both sides of the chamber, met and interviewed Phil Myers, and it was the unanimous decision of the Appointments Committee to recommend to full council, because it is an appointment that has to be made by full council, that Phil Myers be appointed as Braintree District Council's Chief Financial Officer, bracket Section 151 Officer, with effect from the 22nd of February this year, and that authority is delegated to the monitoring officer to make any consequential amendments to the Constitution to reflect this appointment. We feel in Phil we have someone else who will be able to guide us financially, and as I say, it was a unanimous decision, so I move the recommendations, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do any members wish to speak on this item? If so, could you raise your hands? No?
I've got nothing else to add, thank you, Madam Chairman, that helps.
Yeah. Sorry? Councillor Butland is the proposer of the recommendations. No, you don't. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Thank you, members. The recommendations set out on page 6 of the agenda have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Please can the governance officer ask Phil to return to the chamber? I think she's already gone.
Yeah, she's already gone. You can proceed with item 8 though.
Okay. Now we'll go on to item number 8. Thank you. Process for the appointment of external auditors 2023 to 24 to 27 to 28. Members, this item is set out on page 9 to 17 of the agenda. Please can I invite Councillor Butland to introduce the report and move the recommendations. Please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
I move, Madam Chairman.
Seconded and reserve right. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Butland to speak on this matter.
Madam Chairman, I formally moved it because of the situation that we have. Councillor McKee can participate in the debate, but as he cannot vote, he is not also able to move or second things. So with your permission, could I ask if you will now call Councillor McKee to actually refer to the paper, which he would have done if he was in the chamber.
Right. Councillor McKee, as the relevant Cabinet member, I would like to invite you to speak now.
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, I'd like to apologise for not being present with you, but unfortunately, positive test for COVID has precluded me from joining you in the chamber. I shall move on to the report. This report on pages 9 to 17 lays out the proposal for the appointment of external auditors for 23-24 to 27-28 and agree the preferred approach. Under the Local Government and Audit Accountability Act of 2014, the Council is required to appoint an auditor to audit the accounts for each financial year. The current auditor appointment arrangements cover the period up to and including the audit of 22-23. The Council opted into this appointing person national auditor appointment arrangements established by the Public Sector Audit Appointments, PSAA in shorthand, for the period covering the accounts for 2018-19 to 22-23. The PSAA is now undertaking a procurement for the next appointing period covering audits for 23-24 to 27-28. The Council needs to consider how it wishes to procure its external audit arrangements from 23-24. If the Council wishes to take advantage of the national audit appointment arrangements, it is required under the local audit regulations to make decision at full Council. The opt-in period started 22nd September 21 and closed on the 11th of March 22, so clearly it's a pressing matter. To opt into the national scheme from 23-24, the Council needs to return the completed opt-in documents by the 11th of March. Therefore, the Council must make a decision on the procurement of external audit for the period 23-24 to 27-28. In so doing, the Council has considered three options. One, to appoint its own auditor. Two, to act jointly with other authorities to procure an auditor following the procedures in the Act. Three, to opt into the national auditor appointment schemes administered by the body designated by the Secretary of State as the appointed person. The body currently designated for this role is the Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited. In order to opt into the national scheme, a council must make a decision at the meeting of full council. All three options have been considered and pros and cons are in the report. Options 1 and 2 are both viable, however it's considered that they are not the optimum options due to the probable increase in costs and administration effort required, including the setting up of an independent auditor panel where the members of the panel must be wholly or majority of independent members. The difficult market conditions in the provision of audit services to both private and public sectors would not help when procuring services as a small local authority. By accepting option 3 and joining into the national scheme, it provides maximum opportunity to ensure fees are as realistic as possible while ensuring the quality of audit is maintained by entering into a large-scale collective agreement. Audit fee levels are expected to increase through when current contracts end, and the 22-23 budget includes an additional £20,000 per annum for audit fees, making a total for £84,000 for 22-23. I must note the estimated value of the total procurement, however, is around £500,000. Therefore, it's an important decision we're making tonight. The recommended approach is to opt into the National Auditor Appointment Scheme. That is the recommendation of the Corporate Director Finance. The Local Government Association LGA view is that the national framework still remains the best option for council. The Government and Audit Scrutiny Committee considered the report at its meeting held on 13th of January 2022 and fully endorsed for the recommendations. And as earlier, Councillor Butland has made the recommendation to Council. I'll pause there.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGee. Do any members wish to speak on the item? If so, can you please raise your hand?
Nothing else to add from me. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Nothing? Right, okay. Right, thank you, members. The recommendations set out on page 9 of the agenda have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Right, we now turn to the Council budget and Council tax 2022-23 and medium-term financial strategy 22-23 to 25-26. Members, for this item there will be a single debate on the Council budget and the Council tax resolution and a single recorded vote. Please may I remind members that they may only speak once in the debate. Therefore, members should speak to cover both the budget and the Council tax resolutions in their speech. The details for this item are set out in the following reports. The budget council debate, the bound council budget and council tax report, which we've all had, which was circulated separately. The two reports within the agenda, the first report is on pages 18 to 20, which sets out the recommendations from Cabinet, and the second report is on page 21 to 23, which is an addendum report which details an amendment to one of the Cabinet's recommendations, which was necessary following receipt of the local government financial settlement. There is a further report which has been circulated to all members on the 16th of February, which details the Council tax resolution. The recommendations for this item are set out on pages 18, 19 and 21 of the agenda, and the Council tax recommendations set out on the first page of the Council tax resolution report. Before I invite Councillor Butland to commence this item by moving the recommendations, I can advise members that no amendments have been submitted for this item. I will now invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to move the recommendations. Please can I remind you that before you make your speech, your recommendations must be seconded.
Formally moved, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Second and reserve right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butland has moved the recommendations as set out on pages 18, 19, and I'd now like to invite Councillor Butland to speak on the budget.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's my pleasure to introduce this administration's budget for 2022-23 and to formally move the recommendations set out in the various pages as outlined by you at the beginning. Madam Chairman, a year ago this evening we met as a council to set our budget for 2021-22. We were all sat comfortably in our homes, viewing each other on screen as we had our first ever virtual budget meeting. After the traumatic year of 2020, there was some hope around as we witnessed a dramatic fall in the number of daily deaths from COVID and the take-off of the vaccination programme. Throughout 2021, the vaccination programme grew as the vast majority of people had both their jabs and then the third or booster one. Life appeared to be on the road back to some form of normality. However, Madam Chairman, in November of last year, the word Omicron entered into our vocabulary. In a matter of weeks, the number of cases rocketed to a level 4 times higher than we had experienced during the worst period of the Delta variant. Fortunately, as we were to learn, although highly contagious, Omicron was to prove not as dangerous as its predecessor. It is against this background that this year's financial performance and proposed budget has to be viewed. The fact that we are able to meet in person this evening is an indication that we are making progress. That is not to say, however, that there are not substantial challenges that we still face. There's been a rapid rebound in global growth and demand, but that's been accompanied by inflationary pressures and supply chain issues. For local authorities, the continuing demands upon the national exchequer have continued some of the uncertainties that I spoke of in last year's budget debate. The 2021 Autumn Budget and Spending Review Statement, whilst outlining a 3-year funding envelope for local government, gave only a single-year finance settlement for 2022-23, when most of us were hoping for a 3-year settlement. This, together with the publication of the Levelling Up White Paper, the passing of the Environment Act, a planning white paper, and uncertainty around pay settlements in local government, continue to provide a difficult backdrop for budget planning. Madam Chairman, last year I drew attention to the threat to the future of the New Homes bonus. We have been notified that for next year we will receive a further 1.6 million of NHB. This, added to the amount we have received to date since the bonus was first introduced in 2011, takes the total amount that will have been provided to the Council to almost 19 million. Our approach in this Council has been to use this money for investment, supporting projects and programmes that have been targeted at promoting and supporting delivery of business and housing growth, with all the economic benefits this brings to the district as a whole. Together with other capital resources, the National Homes Bonus has allowed the Council to deliver on a number of projects and programmes, including supporting affordable housing schemes by Family Mosaic and Cone Housing, and to acquire land at Chapel Hill for future housing provision. The regeneration of the Braintree Town Centre at Manor Street, bringing new homes, health facility, a hotel that will increase footfall in the town, and other public realm and transport improvements. Health facilities at Church Lane, Braintree, and feasibility work for the proposed Headingham Medical Centre in the north of the district. It helped us to acquire offices at Century Drive to generate income to help support the budget, and to provide grow-on units and car parking at Springwood Drive to meet the expanding needs of businesses and to contribute towards funding the H120 Enterprise Centre. It also helped on superfast broadband, supporting the rollout across the district to both residents and businesses, and also to meet the Council's agreed contribution towards future highway improvements at the A120 Millennium Way interjunction. Taking account of the funds that have already been spent or committed, there remains a balance of 3.8 million of New Homes Bonus unallocated by the end of this year. Excuse me. My colleague, Councillor Tom Cunningham, the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, in his contribution to the debate, will outline some of our plans for utilising the National Homes Bonus in the future. Our plan, Bouncing Back Together, BBT, sets out the plan for recovery over the 18 months ending March 2023, as we emerge from the huge impact of the pandemic, and focus our attention on the things that matter to residents and businesses, namely sustainable growth and prosperity, strengthening our communities, unlocking more opportunity for all our residents, and protecting our environment for future generations. Madam Chairman, we will continue to review and refresh our plans in response to changing circumstances. Some of the key proposals in our proposed budget for 2022-23 address issues which we know residents and members across the Chamber fully support. Councillor Gabrielle Spray, the Cabinet Member for Planning, will refer to the significant extra resources that we will be making available for planning enforcement. Councillor Peter Tattersley, who is standing in for Councillor Frankie Ritchie this evening, will outline our proposals in respect of our communities, and Councillor Wendy Schmidt will update members on our approach to air quality. Madam Chairman, we remain a financially sound authority, and my colleague, Councillor McKee, who would have been seconding the recommendations if he was able to be present in the Chamber, will refer in more detail to our overall financial approach, and I hope you will call him immediately after me. Finally, I turn to the proposals in respect of council tax. As a district, we are the fourth most populated in Essex, covering some 612 square kilometres, the second largest district in the county. 90% of the district is green space and contains 31 different parks and open spaces. Within the district, there are over 9,800 businesses. The District Council provides a diverse range of services, including environmental health, planning control and enforcement, leisure services, waste recycling and collection, licensing, benefits, parks and open spaces, housing, economic development, and many more. It provides all these services to residents living both in our rural and our urban areas. Our current Band D tax rate for the current year at £184.68 is the fourth lowest of the 12 districts and borough councils in Essex and is significantly below the average. And members will appreciate that having a large rural area, it is quite expensive to provide services there. So to have a level of council tax as the fourth lowest, I think, is something that we can all be proud of. This budget proposes an increase, however, in the council's share of the council tax bill of £4.95 for the whole year, or less than 10p a week. This will set a proposed Band D tax rate for Braintree District Council's share of the overall bill of £189.63. For those in administration, we would prefer not to have to increase the tax burden on our residents. The rise of 2.68% is significantly below the rate of inflation. And I commend the recommendations set out in item 9.1 on pages 18 to 20 of the agenda paper, the recommendation in item 9.2 on page 21 of the agenda paper, and in item 9.3 the Council Tax Resolution 2223 to the Council. I believe this is a sound budget by a sound council which will continue to provide high-level services to our community, and I so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor McKee, as the relevant Cabinet member, I would like to invite you to speak now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The report sets out the proposals for the budget and updated MTFS, medium-term financial strategy. Cabinet have considered these matters on two separate strategy workshops, and proposals have been reviewed and scrutinised across 3 meetings of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee on the 24th of November, the 5th of January and the 2nd of February. All recommendations to full council set out in the report were agreed by the Cabinet at their meeting held on 7th of February. A number of questions were raised at Cabinet for which written responses have been provided. The budget proposals being put forward have addressed the following requirements: investment in key priorities, the wish to invest in key service priorities. These are areas that support the Council's recent climate change and cycling strategies, that makes a difference on matters of concern across members, planning enforcement, continues to support funding for community projects, and puts essential investment into our core business systems. More on some of these key priorities will be given by relevant Cabinet members. Closing the budget gap. At the same time, we have been mindful of the need to address our longer-term financial challenge and to strengthen our financial resilience. This has included identifying a new savings and areas of additional income of over £500,000 for next year, with further savings identified in subsequent years. We have reviewed our fees and charges for next year. These are detailed in the report. For many areas, increases are inflationary, although some areas have changed by more due to the regulatory requirements and cost pressures. Car parking charges, which were due to be reviewed for implementation from April 22, are being held at their current tariffs while the car parking service is reviewed. Our treasury investments, which were adversely impacted impacted by the pandemic, resulting in a drop in dividend and interest income, are now expected to recover over the MTFS period. We are using government funding to best effect in supporting the costs we incur from tackling the issues around homelessness and those at risk of becoming homeless. Through the growth and development across the district, we have been able to reflect better than anticipated increase in the tax base for both council tax and business rates. We have also had to address a number of cost pressures facing the council, including pay and other staffing related costs, increased national insurance contributions, rising energy and fuel costs, other inflationary costs on contracted areas of spending, and increased costs due to supply chain and other labour shortages. The budget includes strengthening our capacity around senior management. The local government finance settlement. I think Councillor Button referred to it in his introduction. Details were finalised in the announcement by the government on the 7th of February. This confirmed a single-year settlement with the emphasis on providing some stability for next year, but with notice that the government will be reviewing the needs and resources for all councils over the coming months. For 22-23, a new one-off, not ring-fenced services grant is being paid of £240,000, and a lower tier services grant, which was first introduced in the current year, is to be paid for the second year with £160,000 allocated to the council, a slight increase in the figure that was included in the provisional settlement. These two grants reduce the budget gap for next year, but we are treating this as a one-off gain until such time as we have more clarity over any changes in future funding. Other aspects of the financial settlement. Again, as Councillor Butler mentioned, the new homes bonus, confirmation we will receive NHB using the same methodology as 21-22, meaning allocation to the council of £1.4 million. And also confirmed that the outstanding legacy payments of £225,000 would be paid. Business rates pooling. The Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities confirmed that Essex Pool will continue for 22-23. This arrangement will allow the council to benefit from extra business rate income collected. Since our first participation in an Essex pool, this has resulted in over £3 million of additional business rate income being kept by the council, which we have used to reinvest into business throughout the iConstruct Innovation Centre and the Horizon 120 Enterprise Centre. I'll now turn to balances and reserves. Our financial balances remain healthy, and for this reason we are able to allocate some of our unallocated general fund balances to meet one-off investment needs, as well as bridging the residual gap in our budget next year of £89,000. We have also looked hard at our earmarked reserves and proposed to reprioritise the balances towards supporting those areas where funding is considered to be most needed. We are also proposing a single consolidated climate change reserve, as well as a new reserve to support our proposal for an expanded planning enforcement function and to manage future risk around recycling income, which is subject to market pricing. We're also proposing to retain the 1 million provision. If you remember, we provided £1 million in 21-22, and we're proposing to keep that for 21-23-24, so that to set aside the current year's budget to help meet the financial consequences arising from the COVID pandemic. Whilst we continue to experience a reduction in some income areas and increased costs, so far this has been contained with the extra funding we have received. However, beyond this financial year, there is no additional funding being provided to local authorities, and therefore it is prudent we continue to ring-fence this money in reserve to offset any further impact on our budgets and to have a clearer view on the long-term implications which can be reflected in our financing planning. Financial challenge over the MTFS. Despite the positive efforts and improvements we have been able to make in our finances, we still have a financial gap over the period of the MTFS. Our best estimate at this time is a shortfall of £1.2 million, with much of that impacting in 23-24, and the number is £925,000 impact. This also has been seen in the context of the high level of uncertainty that still exists around our future funding from government. as well as any lasting impact of COVID and the risks around inflationary and other cost pressures that might impact on the services of that which we have already allowed. Council tax. We still aim to be a low council tax authority. Our Band E council tax rate of 21.22 at £184.68 is the fourth lowest of the 12 districts and borough council in Essex, and significantly below average. The budget proposed an increase to the council share of the bill of £4.95, as Councillor Button indicated. This gives a proposed Band D tax for the council share of the overall bill of £189.63. Added to the council portion would be the council tax levied by the major precepting authorities, Essex County Council, the police and fire. In areas where there are parish and town councils, a local precept rate will also be added, and the numbers of those are in your report. The details of this are set out in the separate council tax resolution report that enables the council to formally set the council tax rates for 22-23. Capital investment. New capital bids totalling almost 1.5 million are being proposed for the next year. Much of this investment is being made in the council's ICT systems and server infrastructure, along with the regular programme of maintenance to our buildings. We are proposing to continue supporting our annual investment in play area refurbishment. Our intention is to continue to support a programme of funding for disabled facilities grants using money received from the Better Care Fund. Excuse me. Other matters concerned in the budget report, and I'll skip through these quite quickly because you can read them, but in the report, Local Tax Support Scheme, LCTS, and Hardship Support Fund is in your report. Discretionary council tax discounts and exemptions is also in your report. And I'll just briefly talk on that a little. Where properties are long-term empty, a premium will continue to be charged, which increases the longer the period the property has been empty, with a maximum premium being 300%. For a property that has been empty for more than 10 years, a refund of the additional premium, over 50% for the last 12 months, is still being made if a property is brought back into use. Discretionary business rate relief. Existing relief for rural properties and local newspaper offices is to be extended in line with the government wish to see these continue. The council will be reimbursed for any relief granted under these schemes. The government has also requested that authorities introduce 2 new relief schemes for 22-23. Retail, hospitality and leisure business rate relief, set out in your report. Extension of transitional relief and supporting small business relief, some small and medium properties. Again, details in your report. I'll touch on pay policy. The report includes the pay policy of 22-23, which is recommended for approval, subject to the rates pay quoted in the policy being updated once the 21-22 pay settlement has been confirmed. Robustness of the estimates and adequacy of the proposed financial reserves are in your report. Capital investment strategy, Appendix I, an important part of the overall strategy of the council, and treasury management strategy, which is clearly an important issue to do with how we use our balances and how we use our investments, is also in Appendix J in the report. Last but not least, environment levels and policy framework, Appendix K. The Constitution requires members to agree the framework and annual limits annually. Environment levels proposed are as agreed when the financial procedure rules were last adopted by the Council on the 19th of April 2021. I'll pause there and hand back to Councillor Butler.
No, well, thank you very much, Councillor McKee. I'd now like to invite Councillor Abbott as spokesperson for the largest opposition group to respond to the overall budget and the council tax resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and can we thank Councillor Butler and McKee for their presentations, and also obviously all the officers who've had to make sure the maths adds up. There's a lot of work goes into preparing these budget reports. I'd also, as I do every year, like to thank the administration for their inclusive approach on the PMB process. And yes, a few changes were made as a result of what members had said during that, and I think that's really important. And I hope it continues. Councillor Butland referred to the Braintree District Council share of the council tax going up by 2.68%. But perhaps a member of the administration can confirm that the actual council tax that goes through people's doors, the bill, will be higher than that, because the county is the largest share, I think 70%, and their increase is around about 4.5%. The parishes, I believe, is just over 3%. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head what the percentage increase for the police and fire is, but and I know it will vary because obviously the amount that's set per parish is going to be different, and obviously there are unparished areas. But overall, I would imagine the percentage for most people is significantly higher than 2.68%. And I think it's not really appropriate, I have to say, for Councillor Butland to say, well, it's less than the rate of inflation. Inflation under this government is north of 5%, and it could well hit 7%. That's the sort of typical projections that are being made. And that comes on top of increased cost of living impacts, particularly from fuel. Like many people, I had a letter from my electricity provider the other day. It says, you may notice a change in your bill soon. It's a mild way of putting that we're all about to get whacked by an enormous increase in fuel bills. And then, of course, we've also got the national insurance increase, which I know is causing concern even amongst the Conservative Party. This year, the story of this year, apart from anything else that's going on internationally, is going to be the cost of living impact on ordinary people. Some analysts have said that some sectors, particularly young earners, could be facing a 30% reduction in their effective spending ability. It's going to be a very, very difficult year for a lot of people. So I think we have to be careful around the words we use, and we have to recognise what's coming down the tracks. As Councillor McKee said, the budget position has improved, but we only think for 1 year at the moment on the basis of the extra 400,000 support from government grants, which is welcome. And there are a number of good things in the budget, which I think we can all support. The continued investment in climate change and cycling. The thing, though, I would say about cycling, and I've said it before, we really need to deliver on this and not just talk about it. And to deliver on it, that means we've got to create new, safe, off-road cycling facilities so that people do not have to share road space as much as possible with fast-moving and heavy traffic. We on this side, and as you know, we've been calling for this for a couple of years, strongly welcome the new investment in the Planning Enforcement Service. It's really important. A lot of residents and parish councils do, bend all of our ears as councillors about planning enforcement. That's not to criticise the individual officers at the minute. It's simply we don't have enough of them, and we need to make sure if we can recruit more and have a more effective service. As per what I just said about the council community grant, that's gone back up to 1,250 from the original proposal of 1,000. So obviously we welcome that. The administration did listen. And we also welcome the fact there will be a carryover into next year. But we do know that that is at the expense of the previous repayment to parish councils of the council tax surplus. And Councillor Butland didn't mention in his speech the letter from the Braintree Association of Local Councils, which I believe all councils have got, where they say they want to make district councils aware of the association's views and that particular proposal should be withdrawn. Now, I don't know if Councillor Butland can say whether this is a permanent change, but I did think it was buried away a little bit in the numbers given us to PMB, that in effect the council community grant is going to be paid for by a fund that was redistributed to parishes. Councillor Butland has made a commitment, and he has said he's going to stick to it, of a councillor capital bid process starting quite soon in the new financial year. This will be very welcome, and it's something on this side we are going to be banging on about quite a bit. There's a lot of talk about levelling up. We'd like to see more levelling up within this district. And one way that can be done is through an effective councillor capital bid process, whereby ordinary backbench members can put forward a suggestion, working with their local community, the local parish council, the local organisations, as to what they'd like to see money spent on, because for far too long the decisions in this council, and indeed many others, are made by a very small group of councillors as to where that capital money goes. And as Councillor Butland knows, I believe some of that money could be New Homes bonus money. That's what this council's kept it for capital investment, so let's do that. And it was instructive, listening to the Leader of the Council, that he reeled off a list of things that this council's invested in the last year. Apart from broadband, I didn't hear one of them being south of Braintree Town. Now, we do need, and as Councillor Cunningham shaking his head knows, I mean, he never said I'd got it wrong. Over 90% in the last year of capital investment went to Braintree and Great Notley. So we need to see a better distribution of that capital investment. Councillor Butland mentioned items like health. We have been promised in the south of the district major health investment for a very long time, particularly in Whittam. It hasn't happened. We've seen the news reports, we've seen the MP saying, oh, this new clinic coming, nothing's happened. So we need to see a much fairer redistribution of this money, and in particular also to the villages. Councillor Butland said, well, there's been all this housing growth. Indeed there has. Thousands of houses built in the villages in the south of the district, and I appreciate in other parts of the district. Where is the services to match that enormous increase of housing? Simply, it has not come at the level that it should do. So I think that is something we're going to be certainly looking for, Madam Chairman, in the next year, is a fairer distribution of investment right across the district. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do any members wish to speak on this item? And if so, please indicate by raising your hands or via the chat function. Who's going to make the list? Can you just keep your hands up until you've been acknowledged? Okay. And can I remind members that they may only speak once during the debate. Speeches should not last longer than 5 minutes, but I will exercise my discretion to allow longer speeches if the point is particularly complex or detailed. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, members. As the leader referred to in his opening statement, I would just like to touch on the planning and enforcement budget request for additional funding for the enforcement team. This arose principally from the successful cross-party member reference group, which examined enforcement last year. And I would just like to say that I do appreciate the support from the other side of the chamber. Now, that reference group came in turn from an acknowledgement by the enforcement team that the current system is not performing to the very high standards that this authority expects, and indeed that the team themselves would like to see. Now, these are a small number of very conscientious and professional officers, and they have keenly felt the criticisms levelled at their performance. As the portfolio holder, I have received numerous emails and phone calls from residents, parish councils, town councils, and many councillor colleagues who are present on this meeting this evening, expressing their frustration at the perceived lack of progress in regards to enforcement complaints. The number of complaints continues to rise, and many are increasingly complex. It has to be said that when necessary, officers can and do act swiftly. And a good example of that were 2 serious enforcement breaches which occurred towards the end of last year, both of which resulted in High Court cases, but it involved the team leader and one of his enforcement officers literally dropping everything else they were dealing with in order to pull together the necessary evidence and get the legal advice that was needed and then appear several times in the High Court, and on both occasions judges requested that they appear in person. You know, the result of both those cases was successful as far as this authority was concerned, but it did require a lot of time and a lot of effort, and at the expense of dealing with other ongoing cases. So out of the MRG discussions and recommendations, together with a departmental review, comes the request for £209,000 of funding to provide additional officers. 2 of those posts will be concerned with the implementation and monitoring of conditions attached to planning permissions. And that's something that the reference group felt very strongly about, because it doesn't currently happen due to a lack of resources within the team. There will also be a full-time admin officer. Now, at the moment, that post is shared with the development management team, and it amounts to no more than a handful of hours per week. I think it's 7 hours per week. So a lot of time on admin is spent being done by the enforcement officers themselves. And importantly, of course, there will be additional full-time enforcement officers to deal with new and ongoing complaints. 1 senior officer and 1 enforcement officer. There are other changes proposed, improvements to the enforcement portal, the reporting and response process, something again which comes up frequently, that members in particular don't feel they get sufficiently timely feedback on what is happening with complaints, and there will be further back office measures as well. I fully recognise, Madam Chairman, that at a time of very squeezed budgets, this is a not insubstantial amount of money to put before Council, but I don't believe it's been widely appreciated that enforcement has not, up till now, had its own budget. And I think, to finish, Madam Chairman, I can say with confidence that if approved, this measure will make a difference, and it's one which will be noticed by councillors and by residents of the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coleridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 points for me, please. The first one is I do commend the strong financial performance of this council, so that they've been able to temper the part of the rise in council tax that is under the control of this authority. It's 2.68%, which does come on the back of a flat increase in the prior year. I do appreciate that there are strong inflationary pressures that the council are facing, so to keep this rate down to a minimum is going to be appreciated by our residents. Also welcome any investment into Whittam, by which I represent a ward in that town. I know that there's investment going into the Enterprise Centre and town centre improvements, but I'd like to raise the Malting Lane Community Centre, which is very slow in being progressed at the moment, and I know that the land and Section 106 money has been secured, but anything that can be done to expedite that facility, which is going to be key to that local community, would be appreciated by the residents in that part of the district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. When we were last present as a large number 2 years ago for the budget in 2020, as the leader said, nobody could have quite envisaged the crisis we would face. Little did we think, and those particularly involved with supporting economic matters in the district of Braintree, little did we think that the overriding immediate objective at that time for our economic development function would be to distribute unprecedented sums of grants to the business community, a task which economic and finance officers continue to do with speed and diligence, and for whom the business community remains grateful, as do we. Back in 2020, our focus was on growth. In 2022, it's about consolidating recovery and stimulating future growth in a very different world. As mentioned by the leader and Councillor McKee, thanks to unprecedented sound financial management over nearly 2 decades of Conservative administration of this authority and our approach to New Homes Bonus, we are in a position to continue to play our full role in investing in social and economic recovery across the district of Braintree. Regrettably, the political narrative of the largest opposition group has been to refer to the locality of some of the investments. And I really, Madam Chairman, I don't want to get into the weeds of a bad-tempered discussion with Councillor Abbott, because I want to find where we can probably agree some common ground on this. We really mustn't ignore the wider benefits of certain investments dependent just on their locality. The benefits of Horizon 120, that's attracting significant inward investment to North Essex in an exemplar working environment and employment site. The Horizon 120 Plaza Enterprise Centre, supporting start-ups and providing business support, that will benefit a wide area. The iConstruct Hub, supporting jobs and new products in the construction industry, which you referred to earlier, Madam Chairman, that's supporting businesses and job growth across the whole South East Local Enterprise Partnership area, and also generating revenues to pay for this authority's frontline services, services which are appreciated by all residents of the district of Braintree, Madam Chairman, not just those who reside in the CM7 or CM77 postcode. And I do think we need to emphasise that point and agree that point going forward. I'm delighted that the budget provides the opportunity to bring forward and deliver future commitments across the whole of the district. Complementing our Braintree Town Centre works, a paper will come to March Cabinet setting out the procurement process for improvements in both Witham and Halstead. Supporting our town centres has never been more needed. The changing face and requirements of our high streets were needed before the pandemic and have only been exacerbated during the pandemic. We are delighted that a business case for the Witham Enterprise units will be ready shortly. A clear brief has been set to deliver a project that supports economic recovery on land from Section 106 agreement, supporting start-ups, encouraging an environment of collaborative working in key sectors, and a design conducive to modern working practices. Working with my colleagues Councillor Bowers and Councillor Van Delken, there is also a clear priority that this does need to deliver a financial return to this authority. These are our own initiatives, but we are delighted to be hearing more about the government's Shared Prosperity Fund. Regardless of how we voted in the EU referendum, many of us have been wanting to hear the detail of this future fund post-Brexit for the last 5.5 years. We have been advised that a 3-year funding allocation will be made, including to local authorities such as Braintree. In the spring, it is expected that the Council receive its draft allocation and more details of the process. Allocations are expected to be linked to levelling up, with Braintree ranked in the middle tier between the most and least deprived areas. And Madam Chairman, I think it's important to realise that whilst there are areas of great affluence in the district of Braintree, there are areas of deprivation. Some of this deprivation is visible, some of this deprivation is hidden. And again, that contrary to popular local narrative in the media and social media, that deprivation is not just in urban wards. I hope once again, Madam Chairman, that this budget sets out our plans for recovery as part of a refreshed economic plan for growth and demonstrates our long-standing commitment to the local economy. The well-being of all residents is best supported by a prosperous local economy. As we bounce back together from these dreadful times, an old phrase from this locality remains relevant now as it did then. Braintree means business, and the district will continue to play its full part in grasping the opportunities to benefit all residents. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dorrigood.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Just got a question, really. Councillor McKee mentioned the 1.2 million budget gap for next year. Obviously, that figure sort of sticks in my mind because the majority groups, West Tay and West of Braintree Newtown plans cost Braintree about 1.2 million. So my question is, if the majority group hadn't spent that money on the unsound plans, would BDC still have a budget gap of 1.2 million? And if not, could you explain where in BDC's finances the 1.2 million that was spent on West Hay and West of Braintree plans came from? Thank you. Can I just add, because I couldn't speak earlier, in the levelling up, which Councillor Cunningham just mentioned, to me the levelling up was a sort of election slogan from 2019, and it is at best a start in that it identifies a problem, but really I understand that the financing that the government are offering is 4.8 billion. Just to put that in perspective, that's nationally. Manchester City's council budget is half of that. So I just wanted to say that I don't think it really is anything other than a start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Emerging Environment Act places a duty on local authorities to measure particulate matter 2.5, a specific air pollutant. And we wish to conduct a review of our air quality monitoring processes to enable us to ensure that we can meet the requirements of the new Act and also look to monitor high-risk pollutants in areas across the district. There is a greater interest nowadays in air pollution and calls for more sophisticated real-time air monitoring equipment so that we can report with greater accuracy on pollution levels in our district. The paperwork to procure an external consultant to help us undertake this review is going out this week with a closing date of March the 19th. And so hopefully we will get the result of this review by the end of July. And again, hopefully we'll get more detail on the Emerging Environment Act, and so that we can mesh the two of them together. As this, as I said, is all part and parcel of climate change, and it is very important to the district. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a few sort of comments. I think they are actual all comments, if I may. First of all, this BBT, I've thought about this a lot actually since I first heard this acronym, and this whole sort of bouncing back together. I mean, I think we'll be very lucky if our district over the next couple of years even builds back together. And many are even going to struggle to build back. I mean, the climate that we're heading into with the current cost of living crisis is really quite concerning. I just wanted to say Councillor Hilton-Johnson can't be with us this evening, but himself, like myself, have made every effort to visit our parishes and to put forward the budget proposals. I think it's been a really good budget process and excellent work by the executive team, and I appreciate the hard work that goes into this process, and I think it's been very fair. I will be voting for the budget tonight because I think it's the right thing to do, because there's a lot of good stuff really packed into it, and you know, one can't bring all of that out this evening, but I think it's made very good reading. But I was disappointed in a few areas. I previously mentioned it in the process, and I'm just going to underline some of that now. We previously mentioned this evening about the collection of the fund surplus and it not going back to our town and parish councils. As a long-standing member of the council, I'm kind of well versed in how this all works, and I understand, you know, the rationale that we're being given around that. But I still think it's jolly unfair that the town and parish councils aren't going to get this reward. And I just wanted to note that I also received the letter from the Braintree Association of Local Councils, and I thought it was an exceptionally good presentation. I wanted to mention about the Councillor grant scheme. Through the budget process, it came to us with an allocation of £1,000 down from 1,500, and then there was some meeting of the water to put it forward at, I believe now, 1,250, which is certainly better. But I just wanted to pause there and just go to page 16 of our budget papers, where it says at 7.2.3 around the members' allowance and a provision of 2% per annum to be included in the financial profile. I mean, I can't speak for other councillors, but if there is to be a member's allowance, I certainly won't be taking that allowance for the rest of my time as a councillor in this period. It just doesn't sit with me to take an amount of money when I feel that, you know, it's really tough for people out there. And personally, I'd rather put that back into my councillor funding. That's where I think it should be sitting. I wanted to talk just very briefly about the enforcement. I appreciate Councillor Gabrielle Spray has mentioned it very eloquently this evening, and I was a member of the reference group. And for me now, it's about bringing those actions forward, particularly around communication. I mean, that really came out in the process of the reference group, and I think people really want to understand what's going on in their patches. I also spoke previously about levelling up and fairness, and I spoke about waking the sleeping giant, i.e. the potential in the north of the Braintree district in terms of creating sustainable communities that are connected in both services and the economy. And I do feel that the current capital programme, and I do appreciate the funding that sits in the wards of the Headingham that I represent in terms of Section 106 that's available and the new Headingham's Medical Centre, but nonetheless the capital programme is Braintree-centric. I listened very carefully to the points made by Councillor Tom Cunningham, but one thing I would say is it would be really good if this council could work with Essex County Council and bring forward a congestion plan for our district, because it's all very well saying that, you know, Braintree is the centre, and of course Braintree is the centre since I've been a little girl growing up in the district, but congestion is horrendous. And I cite a conversation I had with a resident from Sybil Headingham the other day who's managed to find himself a job in Whittam, and his commute to Whittam from Sybil Headingham can be as much as 2 hours. That's a 4-hour journey. And if we could just now start to turn the corner a bit and concentrate a bit more on that sleeping giant and provide more local jobs in the north of the Braintree district. I asked in the budget process about the Platinum Jubilee, and I'm really pleased that Councillor Ricky's come back. I know he can't be here this evening, but I understand there is more support going in, and I also understand from officers that there is to be a civic reception in Gosfield on the 2nd of June, and I embrace that. I think it's in the centre of the district, and I'm pleased to hear about that. Finally, I spoke about my concerns of a 2.68% rise in the council's budget, and I questioned that. It's a necessity, which I don't believe it is necessary when we look at the council's finances and the assets. You know, we are a very wealthy district and a very wealthy council. And when we look at the cost of living crisis, the rises in inflation, the energy rises that are going to hit us in April, and also tax rises coming from April, I just don't think that it's the right thing to be doing in this current budget round, and I don't think it's necessary. But that said, there does seem to be some relief coming from government in terms of A to D council tax property demands of, I think, about £150. So I do welcome that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know this has been covered before, but I'd like to express approval of the additional sum proposed for the planning enforcement team in the budget. The maximum sum of £209,000, which is described as possibly funding 5 additional officers. We've heard more detail on that. But what I wanted to say was that the additional resources will enable the team to carry out more proactive work as well as reactive. In the present situation, they have lots of inquiries coming in, lots of complaints, and they're basically running around chasing those. They'd like to be able to plan their work better. In fact, one of the officers was a witness to us on the partnership development group. And basically what we're coming over was that they would like to be more proactive and look at things themselves, as Councillor Spray was saying, to look at where potential problems are and to monitor them. So this should help them plan their workload, resulting in more efficient and effective control of our built environment in the district. I commend this measure and the budget as a whole to members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. My remarks, perhaps uncharacteristically, will be fairly brief. I would like to associate myself with the comments made by Councillor Abbott and by Councillor Beavis in her tour de horizon. Paul Thorogood referred to the 1.2 million, the medium-term financial shortfall, and compared it to the contribution to the North Essex Garden communities. That figure is seared in my mind, and in fact I think was 1.247 million, and didn't include staff or management costs. And given that members opposite include 2 directors of North Essex Garden communities, I think we remain overdue an explanation of that allocation of funds and its implications. I do want to talk about the budget, and I would like to, and in a constructive spirit, like to ask, has any consideration been given to using part of Braintree District Council's earmarked reserves, which are a total, from the documentation we've very helpfully been given, and I commend the way this meeting has been set up. The earmarked reserves total 31.1 million. The general fund unallocated is 6 million, and I see that the minimum required sum there is 1.5 million. And in addition, the extra collection fund, 1.556 million, of which Braintree has retained £197,000. And like my colleagues, I notice that it's mentioned without justification or explanation in the report that money would normally be returned to town and parish councils. I believe none of that is going back. So, and I've also noted the letter from the Braintree Association of Local Councils. So given that we have these resources, and I'm not saying that we can fly in the face of cost increases. No, I'll come on to that. But instead of having an additional increase of 2.68%, could some of that be ameliorated by utilising some of the earmarked reserves, the general fund unallocated or the extra collection fund, and could that be done feasibly to, say, bring the rate down to an extra 1%? Councillor Buckland said earlier on that he would prefer not to have had this increase. He then patted himself on the back by saying it's below inflation. But in fact, you know, they've commented on the policies nationally of a party that I'm not a member of, as I'm not a member of any party, but they're in the same party as the governing party of this country. So perhaps they can explain why they're putting an extra, not that it's below inflation, but it's an extra 2.6% on top of a national insurance increase, which is a job tax, and maybe you don't want to listen. And also, your party nationally has cut universal credit, the £20 uplift to some of the very poorest people in the country. The net effect of all this is that we've got the highest rate of inflation in 30 years. So, Councillor Cunningham, I wouldn't be quite so bullish about Conservative management. And as to your phrase, bounce back together, well, don't worry, I'm not going to make any ducal references, but it did rather remind me of a children's play company. Having said all that, there are good things in the budget, and I appreciate the way that it's been drawn up and the members' evenings we've had it. I notice you're smiling. I'm not going to be voting against it tonight, but I do profess genuine and sincere reservations, and I would hope that either yourselves or officers, given the record of the council, could give some consideration to reducing the level of increase, given the pressure that that puts on our residents on top of all the other price rises. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mary Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I fully support the budget, and I'm very pleased to see in the local press that much of the budget receives the support of the opposition, and we've heard similar tonight. We acknowledge that the cost of living is a real concern to many of our residents and agree with the Green and Independent letter in last week's Braintree and Whittam Times that the cost of living is something that all levels of government must consider in the months ahead. When it comes to a household's outgoings, one of the biggest outlays is the cost of energy. While the majority of us subscribe to the principles of sustainability and playing our role in protecting the environment, we must be mindful of the percentage of society who are going to be most financially impacted by this agenda. It is fine for those that have spare capital to invest in energy efficiency and those that can afford the increases in energy costs and the effects of green levies. But there is a good number in our district who aren't so financially well off. And there are those who are just about managing, who will find the burden of the green agenda impacting heavily on their finances. We must consider them, and it is important for those who pursue these policies vigorously, but quite rightly raise the concerns of the cost of living problem, realise that for some the green agenda needs to be far more financially supportive to those that are financially vulnerable. Pragmatism is needed. And again, it is important that government outlines a policy framework that deals with that contradiction and deals with it quickly. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Ricky has asked me to raise three key community issues which we've touched on already tonight. The councillor community grant is not a significant amount of money, but this has been a really difficult issue to resolve. Whilst many members value the scheme and take full advantage of it, some have barely touched their allocation and others have not touched it at all. And when the council is confronted with a budget that's not been fully spent, it has a clear responsibility, I think, to look carefully if it's still relevant. Councillor Ricky has regularly urged members to spend their allocation, so it's not been for the lack of any reminder. The options that were looked at was to reduce the budget to a level which reflected the actual spend, and it was proposed originally, you'll remember, down to £1,000 a member. But following the representations, very well made, I have to say, from the Scrutiny Committee, we've met halfway and gone back to £1,250, plus the ability to carry forward any spend to next year. But I do urge members, it will be looked at again at next budget time, and it does need to be spent, otherwise it's just money that's sat there. If members are unable to spend their own allocation, then perhaps they could talk to other colleagues in neighbouring wards to see whether any could be allocated across there. Councillor Thorogood mentioned Councillor Coleridge mentioned the Maltings Lane Community Centre. I agree with him. This really has been going on an awful long time, and it was first identified as part of the master plan for the Maltings Lane development, and we secured land for this purpose from the developer along with a significant financial contribution. And the council successfully negotiated a series of additional Section 106 financial contributions. But there's still a shortfall that needs to be filled, but probably by the council putting in its own funding. But I do have to say that it's been very difficult to get a consensus across the communities that are down there. I've heard a whole range of different options that have been, and we've not really finalised anything that needs to be done. So we are looking to do a design and costings for the scheme to work up as part of a business case to try and see if we can mirror what the community are asking for down there and find out what the financial contribution might need to be to bring it up to the scheme that it's expected. And of course we do need to make sure that we don't run the facility ourselves. It needs to be done with prospective operators down there, and that needs to be a sustainable solution on that one. And then just finally, Madam Chairman, on the Halstead Community Centre, I know this has gone back an awful long time, and back in 2011, the council allocated £800,000 to Halstead for community projects. There's a balance still of £636,000, but unfortunately, the trust that this money's been allocated to has not been in a position to bring the project forward to date. There is a long-standing commitment, and this rolls over every budget in the capital programme, but it really can't sit there any longer. And there is a lot of discussions now going on with the trust to see if they can provide a business case sometime soon, and I suspect that the funding can't be ring-fenced beyond 2022. We will be extending this funding opportunity to other community groups that might have projects in Halstead, and of course it doesn't rule out using the funds for a community centre, which was the original intention of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As has been mentioned quite well by several colleagues in the Chamber tonight, about the continuation of the Council of Community Grant Scheme. I think this is really important, and as has been mentioned, it was originally 1,000 to now 1,250. And I think the flexibility of having this rollover is really important, because of taking into account the time that we've had with COVID, a lot of our communities and those community organisations and the people running those have not had the opportunity to get together and decide and bring forward their funding and their programmes that are all important within our communities. So I think this is going to be really important going forward, and to see this funding, which is obviously going to be spent right across the whole district, is important. But this funding also does help to unlock further funding. If you take into total account the funding that's available through the EALC and other local authority spending potential grants, all of this combined together is really important. So this is just a key in the lock that is going to help our communities across our district, and it's going to help our residents, and it's going to help those people enjoy and be able to plan what they can do to help their communities, and it's very much going to help our district, and I welcome that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wasn't going to say anything until Councillor Tattersley spoke regarding Halstead Community Centre. Some of you know I'm a trustee there, and our biggest problem that we have is the contamination of the site. If we could get the site contaminated, we could move forward. We have had a meeting with Sherry Root and Frankie Ricky the other day to see what we can do. It's just such a pity that we cannot use that money to decontaminate so that we could move forward. It's a bit chicken and egg for us, but it is contamination that is holding us up. It's a real big issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pell. Councillor Hensman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just with regards to a few comments I thought I'd add my voice to. One of the key things is Councillor Mary Cunningham mentioned was the green agenda, where the energy prices, so residents are facing a lot of rises, whether it's the energy price hikes and so on. But businesses and charities are not protected by the price cap of Ofgem, and that includes this authority, and therefore we will have a huge price hike in, no doubt, our energy usage, and despite best efforts of low energy lighting and so on, it's not an insignificant portion. And I would like to see an investment into green energy projects, whereby we've got solar panels, for example, on a lot of our buildings, but we could go further with say, hydro or possibly wind. And I appreciate residents don't like seeing things like wind turbines and so on, but it's going to be one of those things going forward. In the same way as a mobile phone, everybody wants coverage, but they don't want to see the masts that provide it. So it's you either want to go green or you don't. With the councillor grants, without a town or parish council, I'm pleased to see it going right across the board. So therefore, I know with the BALC representation that I know there's an explanation, no doubt, coming soon, that at least by giving it to the collective 49, it is evenly distributed across the whole district. But in my case, for example, and my colleagues in the unparished wards, I try and get out and do a lot in the community, and we have strict checks and balances before we can spend our money, and until we get the answer back that we are able to spend it, and it's clear that we don't have a pecuniary interest that prevents us from doing so. Councillor Walsh was interested in the £20 universal credit uplift. I'd like to spare a thought for those people on legacy benefits. They didn't get it. So does that mean they were worse off? No different. So other than that, it's just have a thought for residents, and although I appreciate that the rise is always unwelcome, it is a necessary evil, and therefore, in order to balance the books and provide the excellent services that this council does, it's what it is. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Does anyone else know? No. Councillor Butland. Sorry, Councillor Weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to ask a question to Councillor Spray, please. The approval of plans to improve the Little Elms area in Whittam North Ward is welcome, but why did BDC not take the opportunity, working with partners, to secure a community facility and GP services there as part of the significant regeneration project? Related to that, why has BDC allocated Section 106 monies for a community building from housing developments in Whittam North Ward, not to North Ward, but to a community building in Whittam South at the Maltings Lane development? Thank you.
Thank you very much. No? Councillor Butland, as the proposer of the recommendations, would you like to reply to the speeches?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I say how delighted I am that basically we have unanimity across the chamber on the actual budget, and I'm grateful to all members who have participated. There have been a few comments from the other side, though, which I cannot let go unchallenged. I describe it as a smile on the face of the tiger. In other words, we agree with what you've done, we're not prepared to put any amendments, but also we have some points that we would like to put. So I'd like just to pick up on some of those. Councillor Thorogood is still on about the local plan. Of course, if we didn't spend any money on a local plan, no, we would have the money available. But I think that he actually wants us to have a local plan, because that helps us clearly to defend ourselves against developments taking place. So we would have had to have spent money on a local plan anyway. And a lot of the work that was done on the local plan, a lot of the, and there will be members here who have sat through the various reports, etc., that had to be completed, would have had to have been completed anyway. Turning now to Mrs. Beavis, I think I would characterise her speeches as, I'm in favour of everything you want to spend, but anything where you want to save or raise money, I'm against. So she accepts the councillor allowance, and I'm grateful for the support on that, the councillor grant scheme. She doesn't think the council tax rise is necessary. I wasn't quite sure what she meant by the councillor member allowances, and she wouldn't be accepting it. What the paragraph 7.2.3 says is that a provision of 2% per annum has been included in the financial profile, but as she may remember, it is the policy of this council to set the member allowance in the year before the election, so the electorate have an opportunity through the ballot box to determine what they think of that, and in the in-between years to increase by whatever the increase is in the local government settlement. So there has been no increase in years that staff have had no increase. We think it might be 1.75 for staff this year. If that is the case, then the allowances will increase by 1.75%. No councillor has to take any of the allowances. I've just done a quick look on the council website, and I see Councillor Beavis has in fact claimed the allowances in all the time she's been a member of this authority, but that doesn't stop her from not claiming it from now on. She's under no obligation to do that. Let me then come to town and parish councils. Yes, I did receive the letter. I have to say, as a parish councillor, it was not discussed at our parish council, and I also know there were other parish councils who were not consulted on that letter. But that's, by the way, that letter is there. The Braintree Association has made that clear, and also, to be fair, the chairman of the performance management made that. I couldn't help, when I was listening to Councillor McKee, talk about the lower tier grant that we are getting for year 2. When it was given last year by government, we were told it was a one-off. And we budgeted on that basis. The fact that we've got another 120k this year is very grateful, very nice, but we will continue to budget on the basis that it is a one-off. In 2015, when we made the first grant to town and parish councils, it was made quite clear that it would be a one-off. That was clear in the letter, and I've reread the letter that I wrote in 2015-16. No town or parish council should have been doing its budget on the basis that that was going to continue. It has continued. It's continued for the time since then. The only district to do that. And now is a time where we have decided that it will not be available. The only time it could come was at this council meeting. So again, no council making its budget in November should have included it in. I'm afraid it's just needing to recognise that budgeting procedure. That sort of leads on to Councillor Walsh, because I know he's not a member of any political party now, but it's clear to me that his Socialist and Labour Party credentials still run fairly strong in some of the things he says. He talks about, he talked about the increase in council tax. Can I just draw his attention to Schedule A of the council tax settlement statement, which shows the Band D parish tax for each of the parishes. Bear in mind the Band D for Essex, for Braintree, is £189.63. For Coggleshall, which has a population of just under 5,000, roughly 3% of the population of Braintree, the Band D parish tax is £98.27, 51% of the district's Band D tax. So I trust that Councillor Walsh, as a member of Coggleshall Town Council, will be fighting strenuously to see a significant reduction in the Coggleshall tax if he is to be consistent in what he's putting forward. Finally, Councillor Abbott made the quite reasonable point, and it's one that we accept this side. Yes, it is a factual statement that is correct, that the Braintree District Council increase is 2.68%. But it's also a fact that significant increases from other major preceptors will impact upon that. And none of us on this side are making any attempt to pretend that there isn't a significant increase in the cost of living. I think my colleague, Councillor Mary Cunningham, made a point very much about fuel prices. There is a price to pay for green policies. And I personally think that actually that sometimes hits the least well off in society. And we may need well to think about how we're going to do that. And one of the things I've also said is we've got to think, as we move to electric cars, how we're going to raise the taxation, which currently is on fuel and petrol, for diesel and petrol-driven ones. Somewhere, those driving around in electric cars are going to have to start paying for it. And that's not going to be popular. But I don't say that it's not the right thing to do. I just want to make one point about the Essex County Council tax, because that is the most significant part of council tax. It's worth reminding ourselves that 43% of the Essex County Council tax goes on adult social care. £470 million a year goes on adult social care. I know we all moan about potholes, etc., but only 11% of the county's expenditure goes on highways. And that 43% actually goes on 17,000 vulnerable adults. 1.5% of the adult population accounts for 43% of the expenditure of the county council. And unfortunately, adult social care is something that very few people think of until they need it. So yes, there is an increase. We could debate, as indeed debates have gone on nationally for too many years, in my view, as to how we fund adult social care. But that extra increase, which will be on the county council tax, which is the largest bit, just need to think predominantly where it's going. Most of us, I was going to say, it's our grandparents. Our grandparents aren't around, but it's the younger people's grandparents who will be using that. And I think it's an amazing fact that just 1.5% of the adult population use 43% of the council tax. I think that's right. I think that's what we do. I think a humane and decent society is judged by how it treats its vulnerable people. And therefore, I think we should just bear that in mind when we're doing it. So, a few little bits around the edges. But let's not spoil the thing that, by and large, there is a huge degree of agreement, and we witness that because there are no amendments, huge degree of agreement on this tax. We all recognise that this is still a tough time, not just for local authorities, but more particularly for our residents. I still happen to think it's a nonsense that people like me get paid £100 towards the fuel allowance. I don't use it that way, but I know a lot of people do. I think we've got to get much more about how we ensure that help goes to those who most need it. And one of the things that the government has tried, or will try, is the tax rebates which will come in. Not certain that that actually will solve the whole of the problem, but it will go some way to doing it. So no authority likes to raise tax. So in that way, I agree with Councillor Mrs. Beavers. We don't want to. But if we're to provide those services, the sort of work that Councillor Mrs. Smith was talking about over the weekend of helping our communities, there is a cost to that, and we do have to raise that money. So I thank everyone who's taken part in the debate. I thank the opposition members for, by and large, the support. I just felt I had to need to pick up one or two little points there. But I think we move forward as a council in ensuring that in the coming year with all the uncertainties that I set out in the speech, that we will have a sound financial council that can continue to deliver high-quality services and which, according to the consumer satisfaction records, we do please the majority of our residents, significantly higher than many other areas. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. The recommendations for the council budget and council tax resolution have been moved and seconded. I will move to the recorded vote, which will be conducted by the Chief Executive, Andy Wright. Please can I remind members that it's only members in the chamber who will be invited to vote. At this stage, please can those members accessing the meeting remotely turn off their microphones to minimise any background noise. I will now hand over to Andy Wright.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. So this is the combined council budget and council tax resolution vote. And in the usual way, I'll call out members' names and ask for which way you want to cast your vote. Councillor Abbott? 4. Councillor Ball? 4. Councillor Beavis?
4.
Councillor Butland?
4.
Councillor Coleridge?
4.
Councillor Courtauld?
4.
Councillor Mrs Cunningham?
4.
Councillor Cunningham?
4.
Councillor Dervish?
4.
Councillor Everard?
4.
Councillor Garrett?
4.
Councillor Hensman?
4.
Councillor Hicks?
4.
Councillor Horner?
4.
Councillor Kilmartin?
4.
Councillor Corsina?
4.
Councillor Mann?
4.
Councillor McCardle?
4.
Councillor Monday?
4.
Councillor Parker?
4.
Councillor Pell?
4.
Councillor Pritchard?
4.
Councillor Radley?
4.
Councillor Raymond?
4.
Councillor Rose?
4.
Councillor Smith?
4.
Councillor Swear?
4.
Councillor Spray?
4.
Councillor Tattersley?
4.
Councillor Thorogood?
4.
Councillor Van Dulken?
4.
Councillor Wallace?
4.
Councillor Walsh?
4.
Councillor Walters?
4.
Councillor Weeks?
4.
Councillor Wilson?
4.
Councillor Wrench?
4.
And Councillor Wright. Thank you, members.
That's a unanimous yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before I open this next item, I remind members that they may put up to 2 questions to the Cabinet, which will be responded to by the Leader or the relevant Cabinet member. Councillor Abbott, as the Leader of the Opposition, may put up to 4 questions to the Cabinet. Members may not ask supplementary questions. Questions should relate to the function of the Leader or a Cabinet member, the powers and duties of the Cabinet, or matters performing to the district. No statements may be made by councillors during this session. Where a response cannot be given during this meeting, a written answer will be issued within 10 working days of the meeting and circulated to all members. Normally there's a period of an hour allowed for this item. However, the time is now 9:55, so as a result we only have 20 minutes to consider the item. So I would be very grateful for members' cooperation in being as concise as possible during this item. I now invite Councillor Butland as leader of the council to introduce the report.
Madam Chairman, to allow as much time as possible for questions, we will not make any additional statements and leave it entirely to members to ask questions.
Right. So do any members have any questions for Councillor Butland or any other member of the Cabinet? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have 4 questions, but they're quite quick, hopefully. To Councillor Butland, as leader of the council, thank you for your report on the Levelling Up agenda. Obviously, I'm sure all members will welcome the opportunity for a briefing, but it really follows on from the points I was making during the budget debate. What involvement, practical involvement, will each of us, as 49 councillors, have in making decisions on investment and other matters regarding the Levelling Up agenda?
I thought you were going to say what? Yeah, okay. I want to involve members in clearly the white paper, and it is a quite a great deal there, so we will involve that. In terms of the levelling up locally, I've already given a commitment around capital expenditure that we will be going out to members immediately, virtually immediately after this meeting, inviting a period of time for things that you would like to be considered in the next one. And of course, there is always the opportunity for any member to make, or groups to make suggestions as to how we might use our proportion of the budget, etc., in a more effective way. So the door is open, if you like, for how we put ideas in.
Okay, thank you. Second question to Councillor Gabrielle Spray. Can she say what is the current likely trajectory for adoption of the local plan? Have we had any news from the inspectors, the local plan inspectors? And also just to welcome the news on 5-year supply and delivery. But I think a lot of people are on tenterhooks as regards to local plan adoption.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Councillor Abbott. I don't have much in way of an update on the local plan. I am expecting to get a briefing from my senior officers within the next 7 days as to whether we have heard back from the inspectors. I'm not aware that we have, but as you know, we are entirely in their hands as to whether they've accepted or want to make any further comment on the modifications following the recent consultation, whether they feel there's more work to be done or not. Yes, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think we are all on tenterhooks, and we'd all really like to tick this one off our list. As believe me, as soon as I get any news, I will circulate it to members, but I've nothing specific on that at the moment. Housing land supply, yes, we've got 5 years, which, you know, is good news, but it is wafer thin. It's, I think, 5.1 years, which equates to about 66 homes above that limit. So it is very precarious. So I exercise caution in being too jubilant about it, whilst at the same time acknowledging that we've got 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Third question. Is Councillor McKee able to answer questions?
Sorry?
He can. Okay. Yes. Question to Councillor McKee.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Councillor McKee?
I can hear you, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. At Cabinet, you mentioned about the service level agreement with the County Council being abandoned for the library service. And you said that all the current services would continue, it's just there wouldn't be an SLA. But is it correct that that's not actually the case, that some services are not going to continue, such as the ability to drop cheques off for the council? And therefore, is it the case that libraries such as Whitton, the only service that will be retained is the picking up of recycling sacks?
I have to say I'm not aware of that, Councillor Abbott, and I'll have to investigate and give you a written answer.
Final question is to Cabinet Member Councillor Wendy Schmidt. BDC has had a lot of very good campaigns on environmental issues, such as recycling, anti-littering, anti-fly tipping, etc. But I can't recall we've had one on wasting energy. And in particular, as she knows, a campaign I get a lot involved with is campaigning against light pollution, both light pollution at night, but also the wastage of energy from lights left on during the day. We should be doing all we can to reduce energy use. I mean, lots of, well, I think rather silly comments have been made about the green levies. Actually, they're a tiny proportion of the overall energy bills. But the point is, if we're going to get prices down, then obviously we've got to look at the demand side. I noticed, for example, that the Freeport area has loads of lights left on all day long, even in bright sunshine. Is there anything we can do about a campaign to encourage energy saving through lighting? Thank you.
I couldn't agree with you more, really, Councillor Abbott. I hate waste. I'm mean and tight as a person, and it really bothers me when I see people waste, whether it's food, lighting, or whatever. I'm not sure what we can do, but I'll certainly look into it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Thanks very much, Madam Chairman. Two quick questions. One to the Leader of the Council. Thank you, Councillor Buckland, for your update on levelling up. I'm part of a little think tank group at the LGA, and I attended a webinar recently, and they mentioned of the 3 counties in our area that Norfolk has a county level deal and Suffolk has been invited to begin talks. You talked about the highest level of ambition for Essex, and you are a county councillor. What do we see as the possible gains of such? And if we're not going to go for a county deal, why wouldn't we? And then the last thing is more a reflection. In that webinar, which wasn't partisan at all, people made the point about levelling up the needs of rural areas within any district. So I'd welcome if you could expand a bit your thoughts on that.
I'll be quite open. I'm very much in favour of us going for an ambitious county deal. Whether that will be the same views of other leaders, I can't say at this stage. We only had our first sort of get-together today, but my personal view is that we should do that. I think of the 9 projects, ones that have first been mentioned, Norfolk and Suffolk, you're quite right, are 2 of them. We had someone today from the department. There was a feeling that some of those 9 may not be anywhere near as far down in their thinking as we got to this afternoon. So I think watch this space in terms of that. And the third point, I cannot agree more with Councillor Walsh, I'm glad we found something to agree on, about deprivation in rural areas. Because I have been going to parish councils in the last few weeks, drawing attention to the Essex Levelling Up, which was published in early January, which identified 6 priority areas. Now, some of those areas were the ones you might expect. Clacton, immediately you think of Jaywick. Basildon, you think of certain areas there. Colchester, Harlow, and rural Braintree. Now, rural Braintree, I'm not saying it's entirely down to me by any means, but I have consistently made the point that rural areas also have deprivation, but in many cases it's hidden. And within Councillor Tattersley has been with me at these meetings, parish councils have almost looked at us and said, how dare you say we're a deprived area? We have houses in the rural parts of Braintree which still use wells to get water. That don't have any, the houses are so old, they don't have any insulation or anything like that. So I'm very, very strongly in favour of that. We will be, later this year, probably June time, Louise McKinley, the Deputy Leader of Essex County Council, who has been launching these things. We'll be coming out to launch it in Braintree. I think it's more difficult, through you, Madam Chairman, it's actually a more difficult task because you haven't got an area that you can say, here. We have, in our rural areas, significant wealth alongside significant poverty. And also, it may not necessarily also be financial poverty, but there are things about how do you access health services when we haven't got any, oh, sorry, Madam Chairman, usually, well, we haven't got any bus services. So how do we get bus services? One of the ways to get bus services is to go for an imaginative devolution package, which gives you the right to start doing your own transport, recruitment, etc. So I think the things are tied together. I could go on for hours. I will stop there, but happy to discuss it any time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. And the second question, may I put it to Councillor Kevin?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. To Councillor Kevin Bowers. I hope you can hear me, Councillor Bowers. I'd like to thank you for your response to our earlier discussions about following a cross-party question, including colleagues from the Green Party, the Labour Party and Halstead residents were interested. At the time, I think you said, on Afghan refugees, and I know the Chief Executive was active, this was a few months ago, we were looking at housing two refugees or families and maybe two more. I have sort of taken up your suggestion, can one get any mileage in communities? And with Councillor Beavis, I met with two faith leaders from one faith group, but quite influential people. And I'm not looking for a solution to a problem that may not exist. So with all modesty, can I get, possibly in a written answer, some idea of how many individuals have come to our district as refugees, including from Afghanistan? Do we know how many are individuals and in families, and what are the family size? And then lastly, where have they been placed? And in these faith communities, just very briefly, there is an interest in looking at the feasibility of maybe providing welcome meals and some English conversational support and signposting other services. But I do thank you for your earlier interest.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, sorry, Madam Chair. I know we've housed two families living in the district, but I think it would be better to give you a proper written response to give you some more detail in regards to the detail you're asking and see what I can gather for you and supply that in a written response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beavis.
Oh, it's on. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Thank you. Just two quick questions, if I may. One to Councillor Spray, and Councillor Spray, I'm more than happy to have a written response. In fact, I actually wrote to you pretty much a year ago to this day, and it was just about some clarity around the members' forums. I know last year you thought they were going to happen last April, COVID, blah, blah, blah. I understand, things have got delayed. But I think I read in a forward plan that we're going to have a debate in March. Is it possible to have maybe for all councillors just a bit of a working paper or something? If we're going to have a debate, it would be quite good to know before the meeting what we're debating. So just some clarity around that. Thank you. I've got another question.
Do you want an answer to?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chairman. Councillors, I'm happy to give you an answer on that now. Yes, I accept that it has taken longer than I would have liked to bring the Members' Forum to fruition. It is now making considerably good progress, and yes, you're quite right. I am down to bring a paper to full council, I think it's 28th of March, we're due to meet again, and that will set out the proposals, the criteria, how it's going to work. So there'll be an opportunity then, obviously, for a discussion and a vote on it. Clearly, that paper will be in the agenda when it's published. Whether or not I can get something out in advance, I'm not entirely sure. I will find out for you, but certainly will be on the agenda for the end of March. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And very briefly to Councillor Wendy Schmidt. And would Councillor Schmidt agree with me how brilliant our street scene team are? I've had two extremely bad fly tippings in the Headinghams ward in the last week. I know Councillor Smith's made a point in responding to one of them, but do we have any follow-up but the team itself has been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Funny enough, I was going to raise the subject, but because of time, we weren't allowed to. You'll see in my report that I've mentioned 3 particular fly tipping problems that we have been able to find out the perpetrators. It's a disgusting offence, and as a matter of interest, we have got at this moment 76 fly tipping cases under investigation or awaiting to be heard in court. We have got one of the most responsive teams, I would say, in the country, quite frankly. I certainly know in the county. I know very near authorities who never prosecute fly tips. Whatever can be done is done by our excellent team, and as I said, funnily enough, I was going to raise the subject this evening. So I thank you very much for the opportunity of being able to raise it. I can't tell you how that particular one's going, but as I said, we do have 76 under action at this moment, which, as I said, is a great thing from our team. It just shows how many absolutely appalling people there are out there. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Everard, you've actually got 3 minutes, I'm afraid.
I propose suspending standing orders.
Thank you.
An additional 10 minutes.
A question to the leader.
Councillor Everard, if I could just pause you there. Councillor Abbott's indicated he wishes to move standing orders to allow for the meeting to run for another 10 minutes. In order to do that, we do need to have its seconders.
It's very generous.
Lovely. If I could just have an indication by show of hands. Yeah, unanimous, Madam Chairman. We have 10 minutes. Councillor Everard, apologies for interrupting.
Thank you very much. Yes, a question for our leader. Does the leader agree that the team that put the external funding together for the new skills centre did an exceedingly excellent job? And does he also agree that some of this know-how or knowledge could be passed on to some of the cultural and community groups in wishing to start large and needed projects?
Madam Chairman, first of all, I agree with the comments of Councillor Everard about the tremendous work that was done in raising skills. Yes, I think I know where he's coming from, because he and I have discussed this, and Councillor Everard is going to keep on to me every way he can, which I fully understand. I think there is something, if we can provide some help as to how people might go about or what avenues might be open, although it may also be something which I would want to point him towards the County Council and some of the stuff it's doing, because it has got an arts side which could do it. So if he gives me some contacts, I will happily put them in contact with people who might be able to help them. Okay.
I'm taking this list now, actually, as people put their hands up. So, Councillor Kilmartin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In view of Councillor Butland's review of the costs of social care, which are astronomical, and I know one school in my area where just the salaries of the staff are £4 million a year, never mind all the other costs, could we consider as a council a real push on preventive care in the commonest of illnesses that frequently cost the most money? And could we encourage more neighbourly help when illness strikes? That might be for Councillor Tattersley as well. But prevention is what I'm on about.
Yes. Well, I think we have to be careful as a district council of trying to take on all the woes of the world, if I can put it that way. But I do agree, prevention is fine. We ought to have, it is a national health service, but unfortunately it is more a national illness service. And that's what we need to be doing. But it is a fact that those most vulnerable adults, those 17,000, many of them are as a result of the ageing process, which at the moment we haven't found a way of dealing with. And others are clearly people who were born with disabilities, which, as life continues, gets more difficult. So I'm all in favour of, trying of preventive health services and those sort of things. But that I don't think is going to tackle that 470 million, which is going to increase because we are all ageing. And the number of vulnerable adults undoubtedly is going to increase. And both governments of all persuasions, we've been talking about this for many, many years, and we have still not solved it. And everybody wants to leave it to the next generation. Well, we are soon going to be that next generation, not to make the decisions, but who will need that help.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jackie Pell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a question to Councillor Tom Cunningham regarding physical improvements to town centres. I'm aware that it's coming to Cabinet next meeting in March. We talked about the improvements, I know Whittam did as well, some time ago. And I think a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then. Asking if it's possible for the 4 district members for Halstead to have a briefing with you, so before it comes to Cabinet, so we know what is being proposed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Pell, to her question. Yes, can I just assure her the paper that's coming to Cabinet in March is to start the procurement process. It's not finalised designs or the actual scheme in its full state. What I will do is I am working with officers to organise such a briefing, either written briefing initially or an in-person briefing before the Cabinet meeting in March, and that will be followed by regular updates as the scheme progresses and the design and the work pattern is finalised.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. 2 quick questions, one to Gabriel Spray. The timetable for the Silver End Conservation Area, is there any movement on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Yes, the process is underway. There's a little bit of work to do, a discussion between officers and place services at County Council, who they have overall management of the scheme. I am waiting for a date to come up for the first meeting, which will involve a number of us, me, ward councillors, parish council and so on. I believe it's not too far off, but I will get confirmation of that and I will get it to you as soon as I can.
Thank you. Another quick question to Councillor Wendy Smith. I'd like to congratulate the BDC effort on the clearing up of the rubbish on the A120 and the Braintree bypass. Can we have a similar effort on the A12, please?
Madam Chairman, it costs just the Braintree bypass each time we do a cleaning on that £20,000, because obviously being a main road dual carriageway, we have to put in traffic lights, basically, have to close it down. The A12, well, it's like I went up to Northamptonshire on Saturday, and if you think our parts of the world are bad, I assure you there is nothing compared to the A14. It's shameful. It's a disgusting problem in this country. All of the roads, I said, it costs a great deal of money. It's not easy to do because you have to close the highways for the safety of our operatives. we do what we can. That's all I can say. We try even on the other roads. Again, it's an opportunity, something I was going to raise in my report this evening. I do sometimes wonder whether it's the fact that our bins have always been a very tasteful green, and this is why people, I'm being really kind here, don't see them and don't put their litter in. You may have noticed on the A130 and now the A120 the appearance of some very bright yellow bins. If people can't see them and use it, then we know that for some reason or other we're losing a fighting battle in this country. And it is a problem of this country. As I said, the A12 is very, very difficult. The A120, as I said, £20,000 each time we clean it. We really do our hardest. It is a national problem. And I don't know what we do. It's something of the mindset in the British Isles because you don't see it in other countries. I appreciate what you say. We do the best we can with what we have.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to refer to my colleague, Councillor Weeks' earlier question in regards to Section 106 monies in the council budget. And what we'd like to know is, well, first of all, praise for the approved plans of Little Elms in Witham North Ward, which we do welcome because it's a very, very run-down area. Hopefully it will regenerate that quite a lot. But what we'd like to know is, why was it that while this deal was being put forward, that partners were working with to secure this community facility and GP services there as part of this significant regeneration project? Related to that, why has BDC allocated said Section 106 monies for community buildings in Witham South at the Maltings Lane development, but again missed out North Ward? That's my question to Councillor Spray.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. I hadn't forgotten about Councillor Weeks' question. I was going to wave my hand at the Chairman before we finished and say that I will provide you with a written answer on that. All right?
Thank you. Councillor Tattersall, you want to say something, I think?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just urge Councillor Kilmartin to have a look at my Cabinet Member report this time, where we've covered an awful lot of initiatives that will that are aimed to carry out preventative health measures, and there is a particularly interesting case study that I think she might enjoy.
Councillor Raymond, you've got 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is for Cabinet Member Tom Cunningham. As the work to Braintree Town Centre has entered its final stages, is there any plans and provisions in place for disabled constituents going forward? I recently received an email from one of the constituents in my ward. The ramp of the town centre has currently meant the taxis cannot drop off disabled residents near the shops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're actively working with the key stakeholders in that area. When we formalised our plan for the town centre, those who looked after disability matters were key stakeholders in that process. I'm aware of certain specific issues which I'm following up with officers here at BDC to see what provision can be made to help them. If he has any specific details that he would like to email me, I'm very happy to take those on board and raise those points on his behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. This completes that actually completes this item. Members, as there are no further business items on the agenda, this concludes our business for this meeting of full council. Before closing the meeting, please can I remind members that the next meeting of full council will be held on the 28th of March. The webcast of this meeting will be published on the council's YouTube channel as soon as possible. And members, if you have any feedback following this evening's meeting, please can you provide this directly to Emma Wisby or Kim Cole, who can consider it for future council meetings. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation in this evening, and to those watching on the council's YouTube. and I now close this meeting of full council at 10:25.